Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to the Hobby Hoarders podcast. I am proud to present my co-host, Matt Geary.
Hello, how are you?
I'm doing pretty well. Myself, I am Sam Lowry. You may recognize us before if you have seen either of our channels. I am the founder of the Basic Brush, which as of a few days ago passed 100 subscribers.
Winner, winner, chicken dinner.
Thank you very much. But I am nothing compared to the literal giant of a man who's sitting across from me. And where can they find you at?
Here, buddy, Geek Pride. Where we are, Geek Pride. We are now. We're gonna be over. Or, how old are we? 2013. So we're not 10 years old.
Wow,
We're nearly 10 years old. Doesn't feel like 10 years old.
that's mad. Next year.
Yeah, next year we'll be 10 years old. So we're 9 years old now.
That's crazy. Congratulations for
yeah.
next year. You got to make it 10. And then he's just gonna wrap it all up. No, that's a rumor. That's not true.
The thing is, man, like I'm not a quitter. Let's just say, right. So my band's been going 1 years.
Wow.
We've been going for 21 years. Like, granted, we haven't done a lot, but we're not the sort of people who go, we're gonna quit and we're breaking up. It's just like we'll play when we play.
Oh, go on then. You might as well throw in the ad for that as well. And the name of the band is?
Yeah, we're called Skin the Pig. You can find us on Spotify and iTunes and stuff like that. There's some music videos on.
And
YouTube.
no pigs were hurt in the making of those.
It was just a sort of the name basically came from history class many moons ago when an American guy called Clint who used to sit beside and he's like, hey man, I wanna get a band name for a metal band. I was like, Skin the Pig, and he's just like, because I thought, yeah, Skin the Pig sounds really metal. He's like, oh no, I don't like that. I went,
Well, I'll have that then.
I'll have that then. I literally did it on that basis, no meaning whatsoever.
Yeah. Before we get too far into the podcast, we should probably tell you what we are about. The reason I wanted to point out our pedigrees is Matt has done video gaming, he has done tabletopping, he has done cosplaying, he covers loads and loads of conventions. I myself have basically just painted miniatures at this point, and that's what we're all about. This is going to be a podcast all about the tabletop hobby itself. I mean,
yes, and our addictions and the grey piles of shame that sort of lit. Or if you could see at this moment in time, see the sheer hoard of stuff.
I mean, that's where the name comes from, the Hobby Hoarders podcast. It's very appropriately named. So what we're going to do in every single episode, we have a nice juicy topic. And this week's topic is going to be...
I don't know, Sam, what's it going to
be? It is going to be all about what we love in a tabletop game. Admittedly, this can be rather subjective, and of course you may have different opinions. We may have differing opinions, but we have played a lot of games. How many games, a rough estimate, you don't need to count, but how many different game systems for tabletop only? Let's narrow it down a bit, because again, if you could see behind him, there's about 100 board games, like no joke. How many systems?
40k, it's Ice and Fire, A Song of Ice and Fire, Malifaux,
I think if you added them up, you'd be surprised. I mean, you've also got things like Mordheim, X-Wing, Armada, 20 plus. At least 20
I forgot about that. So so Armada, X-Wing.
You don't confess that you don't have a clue about tabletop gaming. We've just tried to convince them to subscribe to the hobby. Down below.
Yeah, lots. It's just, yeah. If I'm a very simple-minded man, things.
And like I said, he doesn't let go. That's the thing as well, So, if you subscribe to this podcast, you know that we're going to be here for a long time because this man has just said
I'm not a
he's
quitter.
not a quitter.
I don't, like I said, band's been going for 21 years. Geek Pride's been going for 9 years. This will go on until basically Sam goes, I can't take it anymore.
He says that, but he's got a good 8 years on me, so he might go before me.
Or I might.
Well, it depends how much you annoyed. So the first section we're going to do is just chat about in general, normally what's happened since the last podcast, but since this is the official episode 1, there is an unofficial episode 0. This is the official episode 1. I thought we'd just cover, just generally anything you fancy discussing in the first section. So have you got anything upcoming, or are you working on anything?
tournament next week.
Ooh.
40k tournament. First one in probably about years. When was COVID? 2020.
Yeah, beginning of 2020.
Yeah, so
It's crazy to think that everything you've got to add 2 years for.
yeah. So and even then, I hadn't played for a while. So it's gonna be.
So you quit the tournament scene?
I didn't. I didn't quit.
He's a liar. Read all about it. He's a liar.
I didn't quit. I just sort of didn't. I had a lot of shit going on.
No, he did.
I've just realized that you're.
I'm advertising for one of my favorite podcasts, Trapped Under Plastic.
I wasn't going for. It was just the fact that it was a sprue, but yeah, I quite like that.
It is indeed.
That's quite a good idea. That's quite a good.
They've just had their own logo made. I'm so jealous. They've got their own studio now for the podcast.
Okay.
And they've just had, what they had was you could send in a sprue. So I sent in a sprue and it's been incorporated into their logo. So it's got Trapped Under Plastic in beautiful red not acrylic. What's the hard stuff? The hard plasticky stuff. Is that acrylic? They've got red letters of Trapped Under Plastic, and then behind it is the sprues from people that listen to the podcast,
wow,
the sprue and spruettes. And so my sprue is in there, along with everyone else's, if you're wondering which one it is.
Okay.
You can't zoom in, but mine is the round edges one, because I was like, oh, everyone was going to send in square edged sprues, so I had to get in there with
you
an
had to
edge
be the cool
case.
kid.
I had to be, yeah, although there was
cool
a couple of people in there. At first I thought they were going to leave it coloured, but they sprayed it grey, or they've only used the grey ones.
Yeah.
So I was pretty safe on that.
Yeah. Anyway, after that sort of slight detour, because I got distracted, I'm very much a sort of squirrel and sort of look into things. But yeah, so tournament coming up 2 days. ITC, so it's ranked. Running Space Wolves. I've tweaked my list. We're gonna hopefully Sam, who hasn't played since like 2nd edition, we're gonna try.
Was it 2nd edition? Whichever one had the Black Templars on the front.
2nd or 3rd edition, I think he's.
Wow.
I can't. Is it? Possibly.
I feel like it was 3rd. I don't think I was going, because 2nd was the one with it was still the Crimson Fist, and they had the big guy with the fist on it.
So yeah, so we're gonna have my tournament list out against his newly super fast painted Death Guard.
Indeed. And where can we find this live stream?
That'll be on Geek Pride TV. It'll probably be on YouTube. I'm not sure if we're going to live stream. It took us so long to do the audio for this one today that sort of I think we're not going to have loads of time. But yeah, so it'll probably be on Geek Pride's YouTube channel. Probably.
Nice. Well, the links will be all down below, as will anything that we discuss. I'll also put up for our visual listeners any photos that we discuss up, but for our audio-only listeners, I'll put them all in somewhere in the cloud somewhere.
I was debating sort of if I was going to make a diary of my first tournament back, 1st and 9th edition.
Oh, wow.
First tournament and stuff to see how it went. I'm not expecting to go very far, especially with the current meta. The Space Wolves are just not competitive. We'll see.
These doggies are going to be running home with their tails between their legs.
Yeah, to be honest, I have bar the odd time where I sort of went custodies who are current at this moment in time, but I've quite like us. I've generally got Space Wolves for the last since I've always had, and even when they weren't super, I've always. So I just kind of like lists and seeing how far I can get with them, and sometimes I'll come 2nd or 3rd or 6th, or in the top 50 if it's a 100-man sort of tournament and stuff. It's good for me. I'm happy with that and stuff. It doesn't sort of bother me. Winning, I know, especially there's slim to 0 chance of me happening because my knowledge.
I mean, if you'd like to hear more about our opinions on tournaments, etc., you can actually listen to our episode 0 on the Patreon, where we actually did it. The reason that we have this as our first episode is unfortunately there was some audio issues, but now we have these lovely new directional mics.
And we kind of know how to use the audio.
We do indeed.
The last time.
But speaking about tournaments, you're preparing for that. Oh, well, I mean, that's very good. I hope you win. I hope you do well. But, as an expert gamer, for the audio listeners, I've just put on there a trophy, a Blaine trophy from the Mantic Overdrive, the first ever tournament. And no expense was spared in making this.
So this is a lid from a spray can with what is this? This one of their models, a 3D.
It is indeed. It's their Kickstarter one, their mascot model who's in every game.
So Mantic,
Uh-huh.
Mantic backed this as a trophy.
That is the official trophy for the first ever Mantic Overdrive tournament.
Look, the model itself's nice.
It is, unfortunately,
But the fact that you've literally got it glued to a spray can. And I don't want to belittle your victory, by the way, Sam.
To hastily point out, there was only 10 of us because of all the rules and things that are still in place at the moment. There's still restrictions on how many people you can have in a location that size. So I don't. But I will say, if you go to Adepticon, their prize is fantastic for the first ever Overdrive at Adepticon. We weren't at Adepticon; we were at Mantic HQ.
You think sort of Mantic are relevant, not maybe in the grand things, but they're quite well known, and you think they could slightly better than a duct spray can.
Sorry, Matt. Could you show me your? Oh wait, sorry, you don't have one.
My imperial, my 3D printed best sportsmanship.
To be fair, that is pretty nice. I'll put a picture up, but it's like a golden robot fist. What is that for? Is that first place, second place?
That's being a good sport, Sam. I'm a good sport.
Oh, right. So you were last place in the tournament, is what you're saying?
I think I came third. Oh, no, I didn't come third.
Well done.
I came.
That's really good, though. I would say that the 40k scene is definitely more competitive. So I'm not.
Harder to win, I think, because you've got people like Manny Shima, who plays pretty much in every single any tournament that I'm in, and he's currently second in the world. He was first in the world, but he's now second in the world because he got beaten by the guy who won the LVO.
And what's the LVO?
Las Vegas Open.
Wow. So he flies over there. Right, so is he
does
from the
all
UK?
over
or?
Yeah, he's from the UK.
Wow.
He runs Glass Hammer Game. And he goes all over the world, and he's second in the world. I can't remember the Siegler. It's a guy called Siegler, but he used AdMech. He won the LVO with a non-medalist, which was quite interesting. So yeah, they play all the Team England guys. I got a bit of advice. A guy called Marcus Hinson, who's one of the guys. He helped me with my list a bit because I was just like, I'm going to use this, and he's just like, yeah, man, you don't want to do that because this isn't going to do. And as much as I don't mind, sort of kind of, I like doing stuff because I was using that guy's painted, and I was going to use Centurions and things because I've got some of them painted and stuff.
Yeah,
he's just like, you're not going to. Healer cult are going to deep strike all around you, and knights are going to. You need infiltrators to stop that, and you need this and that. Take advice.
Some of the greatest moments, though, in gaming have come from sort of what would you call them? Use cases, edge cases like that. There was a photo that I always love. I don't know if we discussed this in the last episode, but the guy with the crew.
Yeah. He just sort of the guy. He put all his guys in reserve, and the guy could set up his army anywhere in the board away from them. So he just lined them up again.
It was a White Scars bike army, wasn't it? It was all off the board, and the Kroot player, because they blocked their edge, they couldn't come on.
Yeah.
I don't think you can do that anymore. I don't think
you can't
can
deploy in their deployment zone. It's going to be 9 inches away from any model, and you can't deploy. Plus, you can't put more than half of your army in.
Right. Fair enough. I mean, the Kroot are looking pretty good for this edition.
Well,
We've had more of the information now for the Tau.
Yeah, the Tau are looking absolutely horrible. You've got Storm Surges and Railguns ignore invulnerable saves. Their strength 50, damage bazillion. And
I'm more interested in the fact that we can now shoot in close combat.
Yeah, well, I watched.
There's a strat that counts them as pistols.
What was I watching? I was watching Winters playing a game, and
Winters SEO, I think.
Yes, Winters. I was watching him play a game against Death Guard with Tau, and they killed Mortarion turn 1 with the Tau. His Mortarion with turn 1 with the Tau.
Does Mortarion not have one of those rules like, who's the big chunky boy, the orc guy? Clearly, I'm an expert at 40k lore.
Gal Thraka.
Gazgul.
Gazgul Thraka.
Does he not have that rule?
He doesn't have that.
Wow.
You can only shoot a certain amount. Do a certain amount. which is a good
Deathbringer does, doesn't he? Deathbringer not only has that, but he has the ability to ignore that rule, doesn't he?
You
have you got that model? I would love to play against it. No.
I don't do Dirty Xenos. I'm an Imperial, as you can see my Space Wolves t-shirt right now. But so yeah, he got killed and he got punched to death by Shadow Sun in the combat phase.
Shadow Sun.
Yeah, so it was just like, because he's got this prototype fist which does all kinds of damage and stuff. So he literally got zapped by the Storm Surge and other shooting, and then Shadow Sun finished him off. And he was literally using crisis suits to jump, right, because they can go off and they can jump around the board and stuff. So he was sort of he, instead of sitting back and just sort of, like, he did have units that he sat back and let him come to, but he was sort of jumping around the board.
Yeah.
And no, it wasn't like obliteration, because thankfully the Death Guard are still quite, what are they?
Tough.
Durable. They're quite durable.
Well, their army special rule was -1, isn't it?
Yeah, so it's -1 to hit and things like that, and you've got contagion rages, which makes them
debuffs.
Debuffs, so basically they can't have it's minus to their toughness and things like that, which is pretty grim. So it wasn't a complete walkover and stuff, but Tau shooting is grim, and you get a lot of it. Even like normal Tau sort of Tau Fire Warriors are putting out 36-inch range on their shots. -1 can shoot twice with
But I think beautifully this fear, jealous fueled rant there sort of perfectly takes us into the topic of the podcast for today, which is tabletop games, and basically what makes, for us, I should put that caveat, you may have different mileage, what makes a good tabletop game for you. So then the first thing that might be interesting to do is, how many tabletop games can you think of that maybe don't follow the standard mold of you have an army, I have an army? Can you think of any games that are less? Are there cooperative tabletop games is something I'm interested in? Because we were discussing earlier, he's trying to shell onto me one of his, he's selling a load of stuff, you should check out his Facebook Marketplace. But it was the Lord of the Rings. But would you say that's more of a board game than a miniatures game? Lord of the Rings Battle for Middle-earth, I think it's called?
More of a board game, really, isn't it, and stuff. There is a sort of kind of miniature game element to it, because they have battle boards that you can, but you're still. I'm not a massive fan of solo cooperative game.
Yeah. Well, I was more thinking, are there any like cooperative tabletop games? But I guess it comes down to, where do you draw the line between a tabletop team and a board game? How would you do that,
though? How would you have a cooperative tabletop game? Bear in mind, if it's a board, you can set parameters for be moved, whereas if you've got a tabletop, terrain's different.
Okay, so is that how we're defining it? We're defining what we're meaning by tabletop in this instance as it can't have a board? Like what makes it different? So, for example, Overdrive has hexes. Is that a board game? I guess it kind of is. You're playing on a board.
I don't know, because like the Dust Tactics we were talking about earlier and stuff, which is Dust Tactics, which is was the precursor to Warfare, which then became Dust 1947, which is now defunct, which is annoying. So, it started off with square. Literally square tiles that you sort of moved. So you moved, instead of having moved to inches, you moved in these tiles, and it was a lot simpler and a lot easier. And technically, that could be classed as a board game because you're moving by tile.
Okay, so just on from that, have you ever played or heard of Mantic's Dead Zone, which is a fantastic game?
I sold you a load of Dead Zone stuff. I didn't. I swapped you a load of Dead Zone stuff. I swapped you everything, and the thing I swapped you for, I'm trying to sell as well, because I'm just like,
don't want to play it. I've still got my faction for that as well.
Oh, okay.
But so then, what do you feel like Dead Zone is? To me, Dead Zone is definitely a tabletop game.
Yeah, I think tabletop would be
It's difficult, isn't it? Because it's sort of what defines people as. Because in that one, you have a static board, but you choose your miniatures, you have points values, and you can customize your miniatures. So is it the customization aspect that makes it a tabletop game?
So if we look at like Talisman, It's sort of there's minimal
It's
miniatures.
predefined. It feels like so. Talisman is a game where one of you is the dungeon master.
Yeah.
I believe we actually
No,
have
no,
some
no.
streams of
Talismans.
Untitled.
It's all against. It's not cooperative. It can be. It's literally first person into the middle, crown of command.
Ooh.
And you ever played Talisman?
I apparently have not. We must have played through Descent.
Descent. Yeah.
Right.
Talisman is basically, like I've got nearly every edition from like I've got second edition, I've got third edition, I've got fourth edition.
Are any of those boxes older than me? I don't think so. None of them are past 30, are they? No. Wow.
This is second edition, and I've got the expansions for it as well. So this is what's the year? 1985. I was 4 years old.
The box is sellotaped together. It is slightly earmarked around the edges, but it is still beautiful. And it's Games Workshop. I'd completely forgotten. Was this before Talisman? Did Fantasy Flight sort of buy the license or buy the actual IP?
Fantasy Flight had a deal with Games Workshop for a while, which was amazing to do their board games because Games Workshop sort of steered away. Games Workshop did a bit of a spiral where they just sort of went, we're not interested in that side of things, so they got rid of it. So Fantasy Flight did an amazing job. So you've got Relic, which is Talisman for K.
Right.
You had,
but not with the actual IP. Oh no, it is with the actual IP. I
Forbidden
can see
Stars, which
looks like
Conquest
Eldrad.
game. The Horus Heresy board game as well. Conquest card game, collectible card game, which was really good. There was, they did loads, and then Games Workshop went, wait a minute, doing really well with this, and then they kind of went, no, we're not anymore. So they kind of so Talisman's being, they used to do board games like Games Workshop used to do board games. They used to do historical stuff. They used to do. They did like really like early on. They used to do historical stuff. But yeah, so you've got like these are like the game. I grew up like when I was 4 years old. I played Talisman. There's timescapes. You'll notice a Blood Angel.
I mean, that's definitely a Space Marine right there. That is an old school Space Marine.
Yeah, this is a Blood Angel.
In fact, that character on the front actually looks familiar as well. I believe that there was actually something like Chainsaw Man or something like that. That isn't the right name, but Chainsaw Warrior. There was a Games Workshop game called Chainsaw Warrior.
This is 1988.
Wow.
So I was 7 years old, and that Space Marine, there is one of my sort of major memory because Rogue Trader came out in 87.
Yep.
86, 7, something like that, and got me that, and this obviously. But yeah, like it's just like you've got a Space Marine, and yeah, it's just brilliant because you could that ties in. Look, this.
Yeah, and the old beaky Mark II noses.
Yeah,
is
so
Mark
it all ties in with Talisman, so it goes. It's an expansion for the action, so you can have a Space Marine.
Now I'm going to try and desperately guide us back onto soft ground because I think this is just proving the fact that we have the attention spans of sparrows.
Squirrel.
My question was, what do we define as a tabletop game? Is Blood Bowl a board game or a tabletop game? You have a team, you add points. It's a hard question.
I think if it's competitive, it's tabletop.
Okay.
I think because you think about it, a board game, I know because you can have chess as a board.
Yeah.
Technically, anything with a board is a board game, but then the thing is, you would, like I said, Dust Tactics, which have boards.
Yeah.
Okay, right, I think I know here's what.
He's made a decision, an executive decision.
A board game
okay,
is a single board, or obviously like something that has a map on it that you open up, you put down, and you put guys on it. A tabletop game is customizable.
Okay.
So you would have different tiles.
So Blood Bowl is a board game.
Yeah, I'd say Blood Bowl is technically a board
Guild
game.
Ball would have been a miniature game.
Yeah, I would say.
Which is funny that you say that because I actually would agree in terms of. I don't know if I would agree on that definition, but I would absolutely agree with that Guild Ball was one because there was so many complicated mechanics on that.
There was no board in Guild Ball.
Well, you had a big mat and then you had measuring
tapes. It wasn't a board.
Well, I mean, you got the paper one that you took out the box. Hang on a minute. We said that, you know, as long as it's customizable, because we've decided that Dead Zone is a tabletop game.
Yeah.
Because the terrain is customizable.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. I can live with that definition.
Yeah. So I think if it's customizable, and yeah, I think the competition's different because it's board games. But I think if it's customizable, so if it comes in a box with its own board that is just that sort of the board, you might get expansions for it. So Talisman, you get a board which is set, and there might be have double-sided ones and stuff, but that's it. That's a board game. Whereas if it comes out like Descent, got different tiles which you can customize and stuff like that. It's more, I would say, it's more of a tabletop game and stuff. There's lots of miniatures, things, make it sort of different. You could potentially argue, I would say it's.
Okay, the reason I was asking that question is because I wanted to try and nail down, like, what are the core mechanics of tabletop games, but I think that has kind of proven that there isn't one, which is going to make it slightly harder of a conversation to have. The first thing I wanted to discuss was whether or not there are co-op tabletop games. There are certain things that are cooperative. For example, if you're doing like Mordheim or Mantic's Vanguard, you might be hunting a monster together to a certain extent. I guess you're still competing to be the first one to sort of kill that.
Yeah, I don't think you. I just don't understand how you would have a cooperative tabletop game. It just doesn't. You know, it comes back to the definition of it, because you can, Descent, if we put Descent as a tabletop game, is cooperative. If you're talking about a tabletop miniature, so there's board games, there's tabletop games, and there's tabletop miniature games. So I think there's like 3 sections there, isn't it? So
okay, so we're going for tabletop miniature games that are not cooperative.
Yeah.
The title of this episode is just going to get longer and longer. See Appendix 3 for the explanation. Okay, so my question then is, what do you like in a tabletop game? What do you think makes a good tabletop game? First thing I would say is the core mechanic. What do we define as the core mechanic? Is dice rolling a core mechanic? For example, you have games like Malifaux. Malifaux doesn't use traditional dice. Exactly. So if you're someone that does not enjoy rolling dice, like my friend Gwen, shout out, she's an incredible player. She is excellent at every tabletop game ever, but her dice, you know how some of us go, oh man, it was the dice. And that's true. It's always the dice for her. Every game. She cannot win because of her dice. And I would love to see how she does with Malifaux, but
I have an aversion towards games where you can't roll dice. It's weird. I just can't bring myself to doing it. To the point where
you can't. So did you say can't roll dice or can't re-roll dice?
Can't roll dice.
Okay.
I don't know what it is. It's like I do play sort of competitive card games now and again, and I had to really force myself into it because there's no dice here. But games where you're using like a Malifaux. You literally use a deck of cards.
You do indeed. You can re-roll by drawing sort of extra cards.
Yeah.
You have a deck, I have a deck, and we both draft a hand of cards. These hand of cards can be used to cheat. So your card values add to, say your attack value is 4 and your defense value is 5. I would flip over a card. You would flip over a card. Say I flipped over a 10, you flipped over a king. Mine would be 10 plus 4 is 14. Yours would be 5 plus the king, 13. To give you a total of 18. And that would be, you would have beaten me in that. But the cool thing is, I can then take my hand, and this is sort of, I guess you can do additional flips. So if you're an advantage, say I have 2 people fighting you, I get an extra card, and I take the highest. But both of us get the opportunity to cheat. So I can draw out, say, an ace high or ace low. So I can put that in, and that means that I am now winning, unless you manage to pull some shenanigans. You've also got the jokers.
My friends are really into it. I just can't bring myself to sort of the idea of just using cards. I don't know. I know it's no different really than using dice, but like dice is a thing.
Well, the difference is the cards are a thing. I know they're flat, but they're still 3D.
I know, but it's just sort of like, I don't know. It's like with cards you run out. In a way.
No, but you reshuffle them. And also, the reason I like cards and why I'm quite a fan of, doing systems that are different to this is simply because your luck will balance. If I roll a dice, I could end up with one 100 times in a row. Unlikely, but possible. But with the deck, let's say we flip off against each other, and I flip over a king, and you flip over a 1. We know that you're going to get a king sooner or later. So the luck is balanced. You don't look convinced.
No, I know, I do. It's not. Again, it's just something I have to. It's just because I don't know.
He's tempted.
I
He's
fear
tempted.
change. My friend's been trying to get me to that for years. It's just because I fear change. And
Well, you know what they say about tabletop gamers. In fact, that's perfect, isn't it? Do you know the saying?
No.
There's only 2 things that tabletop gamers hate. 1, change. 2, what it is right now.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, it's true. You get to the point where you're so used to like 40k people. There's so much sort of love hate with 40k that people just because they're used to it and they don't like change, they just keep it and stuff, and then maybe don't try other things.
So another game that I've played recently, would this one appeal to you any more than using a deck of 54 cards? 52 cards. However many cards there are on a deck pack plus jokers. So what you have in that game is Magic has its own deck that you share, and Combat has its own deck that you still share. Okay. So in the Magic deck, we have 3 different colours. We have pink, we have blue, we have green. And each of those, already sounding complicated, each of those has 3 numbers, 1, 2, and 3. There are 3 1s, 2 2s, and 1 3. Are you following so far?
Nope.
3 colours with 3 numbers each.
Okay, yep.
Okay. What happens now is I would shuffle my cards and I would draw my arcane ability. That's how good I am at magic casting. So say I have an arcane ability of 5. I would draw 5 cards. You, as the opponent, always get 6 cards. You've always got 6. I look at my spell and I go, right, I want to cast Mind Control. It's pink. I have to play a pink card. You have 6 cards in your hand, and you know that in total in the entire deck, there are only 6 pink cards. So I put down a card face down and I say, pink 2. You then look at your cards and you go, I've got both pink 2s in my hand. Liar! And that dispels my magic. Or you look at your hand and
Is
you
this
see
just
that
a
you've
card
got
game?
pinks.
It's just a card
No,
game?
it's a miniatures game. This is how you do magic.
What's it called?
It's called Moonstone.
Okay.
It's really cool. So basically you have to work out whether I'm lying or not. So I might have actually put a 2 down, in which case my magic goes off with a power of 2. Or I lied, but because you didn't call it out on me, it still goes off with a power of 2. Yeah. If I get it off, and you don't call my bluff, there's normally additional actions that trigger from the characters. Like, I might be able to get my energy back. But then there's the other side of it. If you call my bluff, I get damaged. You change the card out for a different card, normally a catastrophe card, and basically the magic blows up in my face. But if you call me out and I wasn't lying, I get to cast the spell again for free. Their sword fighting mechanic is a little bit more streamlined. There are 5 actions that every character can take. There are 3 cards of each. So block high is really good at blocking attacks that come from above. So say you did a thrust and I did a low block, I would block all your damage, and I would, as long as my card is yellow, get to rip to post. So I would get to attack back. So even though you started fighting me, I could attack you back.
Right, okay.
Or say we both did thrust, we would both take the damage. So each action has how much damage you deal and how much damage you take.
Okay. It seems a lot of thought, and I think you'd sort of have to understand.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds quite interesting.
It means that the sort of thought, the time you're thinking about it is less spent on moving your models, because it's a small skirmish game, so you've got 6 models. The aim of the game in Moonstone is, well, we'll talk about the mechanics more later, but that's the first mechanic I want to talk about, is how you resolve victories and stuff. Are you completely set in your way with dice, or have you seen any other weird mechanics like that? So I've seen those are sort of 3 main core mechanics, but have you seen any other mechanics?
I think game either dice and cards, either just dice or dice and cards.
I mean, you've got the. Have you played the Game of Thrones board game?
I've got it. I've not played it.
So with the Game of Thrones board game, basically you have strength. So let's say you had a foot soldier, that's a strength of 1. You have a knight, that's a strength of 2. If you have a siege tower, that's a strength of 3 against cities, 4 against cities, or 0 against just, normal fighters. Then you have the Winds of Change deck, where you both flip over a card, and they'll either be positives or they'll be negatives. Then you've also got your general, who, you might use your general's ability to give you a bonus. I mean, that one is a board game, but there's no reason it couldn't work as a... Basically what I'm saying, are you tied to dice? Do you think that dice is the best mechanic?
It's just that thing that you said. It's just that fear of change,
But do you think dice are good? Like, do any of those sound like a better system? Would you rather have, my troll is strength 5, he always has a strength 5. If you want to take him on, you got to send 2 guys into him.
Dice, you've got more of that sort of, as much as you've got that, it could fuck up and you could really sort of, it's got that chance that that heroic sort of 6 and do damage when you want to and stuff. So, it's very much a very much sort of double-edged sword in that you can roll ones loads and just be really annoyed that you should be hitting because you're right beside the guy and thing up. But conversely, you could roll a 6 against something that you shouldn't really be able to sort of do much damage to and do damage to it. So it's like it gives you that sort of those up and down moments. The dice.
My question is as well, though, is it the randomness that you like? Because I feel like people get really mad at it. I feel guilty when I'm getting sugar hot dice rolls the whole game. Do you feel the same, or are you just like, for all the negatives I've had, I earned this. I earned this positive.
I think you sort of, you do get a point where you get very upset, but it generally, because that's how it will sort of, kind of over, depending on how much time you will, statistically, sort of, the odds wise, you're going to sort of get back to sort of parity at some point in time,
Maybe even in a different game.
Yeah, so it might not be that game, but in the next game, maybe you sort of, it is swings and roundabouts, but it does bring in some really sort of kind of good moments. But the thing with me is dice mechanics and how things are and stuff aren't the most important thing with it. Like that, how you attack and how. For me, it's
Don't try and run away from this yet. We're not done with this yet. My next question would be about your sort of opinion on chance there. My question would be to you, would you play a game using electronic dice that were deliberately weighted to return like a bell curve? So if it started rolling really well, it would then compensate by basically fudging the dice rolls to give you lower ones, so you were always in that bell curve.
No, I don't think. I think not knowing is a thing because you're not, because I think as soon as you start and as soon as you can start mathing things out and stuff, people can take of it. The one.
No, are you jealous of that because you don't have the sort of the maths of that? Because you could absolutely with Malifaux, literally card counting will literally get. Admittedly, there's 2 decks, so it's slightly harder, but still.
I think with it's partially that, and it's partially the fact that if you've got dice, it's literally random.
Okay.
And therefore, you've got sort of as much as there's modifiers and stuff, there is still a chance that person. It doesn't matter how well he plays and stuff, he might fuck up.
So let me ask you this then: is it? You said there because it's dice, and he gestured with a closed fist in a very defiant way. But is that partially because you like the excuse? Do you like the ability to blame the dice? Do you have many games against people that scapegoat on the dice? Do you think?
I play I play a Death Guard player. And he's perpetually going on about his dice and getting annoyed because my Terminator's tank shots and stuff like that, and he's very frustrated.
I mean, Terminators are in 2 up, so.
Yeah. But I, as much as like my brother can get frustrated with dice and stuff when we play, I get annoyed, but again, I generally know about stuff like that. It doesn't sort of bother me as much. I know that deals, and if it was like all game where I was just things like that, I might maybe be agitated about.
So,
things
so
like that.
what day I ask you, and so if I come and ask you these same questions after the tournament, your answers might have changed. So you might go, you know what, I would like a standardized system with equal levels of
No,
luck.
I don't even. Even there, I don't think so, because again, the chance thing for me gives it's the great leveler in certain ways and stuff like that. So even if you are a really really good player,
Mhm.
you can still have bad luck, and that for me is more realistic to warfare and stuff like that, because
Oh, he's bringing realism into our
yeah,
mini
so it's just
toys.
like, because it doesn't matter how good you are, shit happens. Your gun
Yeah.
might not, your gun might jam, or something might happen, and I kind of like that. I
I
like,
mean, I guess that's the thing, isn't it? The best players don't blame their dice.
yeah.
You know, they compensate for them. They get around them, and
Yeah, and that's one thing they've
yeah,
always said. Like when you watch sort of Vanguard Tactic, decent, all the 40k sort of kind of channels, they would generally say that you don't blame the dice,
mm,
because a good general knows how to deal with a
yeah,
situation outside of that and stuff. And as much as it's frustrating for there to be certain things, that's just the way it is, and you
yeah,
should have a list that should be able to deal with that situation. Granted, you can get to a point where you will literally roll ones all the time. You will
yeah,
lose a lot of stuff, but that's just the way. And I kind of like that. I don't sort of like, as much as it's upsetting, I don't get upset if I obliterate somebody, not because their dice rolls have been bad, because they've not played well.
yeah,
If I get obliterated, not because the dice rolls, it's because I have misunderstood how
yeah.
army works, or how my guys work. I've made mistakes in the rules, and I've been called on it or something like that. It's not to do with dice rules. Dice rules are just an annoyance now and again, and give you highs and lows to make it literally a bit more realistic. In a way.
I guess at the end of the day, there's something about scale as well. We'll get on to like what you like scale wise, although the huge pile of miniatures next door is going to answer that question very quickly. But would you say that dice scale better than some of the other mechanics that maybe you've seen or heard of? I I guess that's a hard one because with dice, if I have a single individual, they can have a number of dice. If I have a tray of models, they can have a number of dice. And I guess the argument against dice being better would be perhaps that you could say, well, you just flip more cards or you flip less cards. Do you think any of the methods inherently have a better scalability?
No, no,
No?
because you can like, I've seen Battle of War Star Gamer.
I love the fact that we as tabletop gamers think of ourselves as we know how to play. We are the forerunners. It's like no, like, proper war games have been around for hundreds of
Yeah, man, and
years.
like you see, like they play with literally one dice, and it's just like, you got a six, the simplistic type ones. Did you ever watch a thing called? It was
Time
it
Wars?
wasn't Time
No.
Commanders. It was something like that. I think it was the precursor to Time Commanders,
Right.
but they did it on an action instead of using the Total War.
Yeah.
Using the time,
Engine.
like, and if you ever seen Time Commanders, it was really good. So
Amazing.
it's like, instead of using the Total War engine, they had an actual board, and they had historians, and I think it might have just been like a one-off, but they basically were using the Battle of Waterloo, and they had basically things where you had the right orders, and they
Yeah.
orders each other. There's a channel, oh, Little Wargamer TV.
Hmm.
It's basically a picture of a Panzer with a tiger, and like, it's an American channel, and I watch them quite a lot because they recreate battles,
Yeah.
historic battles. So they did Antietam, they did uh, Austerlitz, a lot of Civil War type ones like that. They did Gettysburg, and they do it with lots of like writing orders down, scaling, and it's sort of like,
Really? Like
it's all
passing pieces of paper across the
it's
table.
complicated, like, but it's not. So there's the dice rolls. There's not like mountains of dice. This is
Yeah.
a bazillion hits, and they're using like corps, and they're using divisions, and they're using sort of like battalions and things, quite big scales. and they use like the Austerlitz one was awesome because they had secret boards that got attached to the other. So they both went right. This is the board,
And then
and
they moved little units.
they
Did
had
they
a
have a referee or anything?
they, well, they had a referee.
And
So
this is on YouTube.
yeah, this is on YouTube.
Oh,
Like,
I definitely would watch
and
that.
so it's basically they had like a board, and they had cotton wool down as fog of war, and it looked actually quite. So they had a proper board, they had cotton wool down, and they basically had them go off, and the guy had made them a sheet, which replica of what was on the board, and they deployed their units within that sheet.
Yep.
And then what happened was, whenever they got, they rolled for the fog to list, because during Austerlitz, when the fog lifted, whatever was in that square was shown.
I
and
mean,
stuff.
that sounds fantastic.
So that was so good. They take it off, and the other things like if you were within certain ranges, then off. But what they also did was they told each other that says, by the way, you've got an additional 2 foot of table that you can deploy in if you want to. And so they had to think about that, and the other guys didn't know. But what they didn't know is both of them had 2 things. So one side didn't put anything on their reserve table, but the other ones did. So they put like half their army on the reserve. So they didn't do the historical thing. So they flanked the French and came side.
Wow.
And it was all sort of like, and they had the fog of war, and it was really good. But like it was like orders, paper, and minimal dice.
I mean, that sounds
scale.
great, and just pure tactics.
Yeah. So I love that sort of thing, like historical stuff. I grew up on it, so it's just.
I guess that takes me nicely onto the next sort of question, which would be setting. Like, behind me, I don't know if you can see, but there's a lot of sort of World War games and miniatures here. But that's because you play it with your brother quite a lot, don't you?
Yeah. So my dad and my uncle was in the Royal Artillery, so was big. They grew up. So my dad and my uncle used to play games like we're talking the old school hex games with the cardboard, cardboard tokens and stuff. They used to do them every Christmas. Like me and my brother do that. And
it's hilarious because over Christmas I was playing poker with we'd each have a tub of celebrations and we'd be playing poker with it. Not quite the same activities.
No, like we play so we play Axis and Allies generally gets played quite a lot. We played sort of the company here play a lot of war games like historical stuff. Like we play fantasy, like we play Song of Ice and Fire, and we play things like that. But historic games has always been a thing. World War II more so because it was more of interest to all of us as a family, because my dad was massively into it. I did history. I quite like the Napoleonic side of things as well, but generally World War II was always sort of like the two sort of era that we play and stuff. So I've got a lot of games.
Yeah, I mean, I started off with Risk. I think a lot of people start off with Risk, and if you're ever playing Risk, I strongly recommend you try the Risk Walking Dead. It has a mechanic that I absolutely love. You have a deck of cards, and you flip over the card, and that's what gets invaded by zombies.
Axis and Allies Zombies.
Oh.
Axis and Allies Zombies.
And it has a similar mechanic.
Yeah, so basically what you have in Axis and Allies, for anybody who's not played it, it can, like, you've got versions that are, this big, or you've got ones that can take up the entire table. Axis and Allies Global, but it takes you 14 plus hours. I love it. Like
a short game then.
Yeah, me and my brother will literally play it over 2 days at Christmas and stuff, and just like we did a stream on Geek Pride where we had we've played 2 games, and we were moving on to our third one, and that took us months to play and stuff. We play every Wednesday for 3 hours, and it went on for months.
Yeah,
because we were like, and it was, but it really sucks you in, because you've got to really think about what you're doing, where you're going, what units you need to build, and stuff like that. Anyway, so Axonized Zombies is a smaller version of Axonized. You can upgrade it to some of the bigger versions with cards and stuff, but every time an infantryman dies, he gets turned into a zombie.
Nice.
Every time,
and presumably you can fight the zombies.
Yeah, so zombies can basically, can move zombies into other people's zones and stuff like that. You can get upgrades for your tanks and stuff that kill zombies. You can actually get tech that controls zombies and things like that to help you and stuff like that. But the whole thing about it is, Axis and Allies is very infantry meta, because especially if you're like Russians and stuff, you want to stop the Germans from getting you early on, so you have to put a lot of infantry to stop the, because the way the dice rolls and stuff, you get infantry attacking ones but defend on twos,
Yeah.
and so it's literally a case of lots of infantry to stop the sort of the getting rolled over. The thing is, every time you lose infantry,
Yep. More zombies.
more zombies and stuff. And what turns out in that game, we thought, all right, there's not, because it doesn't start off with that many zombies.
Yep.
But every time a new turn comes on, you draw a card, and a new infestation happens in that area.
Yeah.
So you've got to put a zombie in that area. So initially, you're like, oh, I'm not bothered about that single zombie, because zombies attack at the end of the turn. They attack on only on a zombie skull, and they don't really, if they do damage, they cause others and stuff. But you're not that worried.
Yeah.
But every time there's more and more and more, and then you're getting casualties, and then suddenly the entire board is your zombies.
And how long does that take to play?
I
mean, we're getting way off topic here. This is definitely a board game.
Yeah, but it's that one's like 4 or 5 hours.
Okay, so the original question for viewers that can remember that far back was, what theme do you like then? So we've got things like World War. We've got things like, I guess you could sort of group them together as real.
Yeah.
You've got your like weird war. That'd be things like Malifaux, and then your zombies, your zombies. You've got your fantasy. You've got your high fantasy. You've got your sci-fi, and then I guess there are even some games that are, I don't know what you would classify them at. They're like none of the above. They're like, you're not even doing something in one of those categories. It's like you're like amorphous blobs. Like, so what sort of setting do you think is? We're trying to make the ideal game. I mean, we've already disagreed about the core mechanic, but we can keep
more
going.
serious games than I don't like silly games. I'm very much a case of, if it's too, generally not. Like, you were talking about rabbits and things like that in a game earlier, and that sounds ridiculous. Why would I want to play a game where you can have rabbits? For some reason, it doesn't do anything for me and stuff.
Silly rabbits. Have you seen Monty Python and the Hunt for the Holy Grail?
I know, but I don't know.
They rip your head off.
When I'm playing war games, I kind of want, because it can get quite serious, especially when me and my brother are playing. It's quite competitive. I kind of want to be serious about it. I don't want to go, and I cast Magic Bunny Rabbit and stuff, and it's just like,
I mean, these are vicious bunny rabbits.
Yeah.
But my question is do you think that one of the genres leads itself more? For me personally, I love Bolt Action. Bolt Action is a great game, and these sound like great games, and I'm sure I would enjoy them. But for me, this is escapism. I need monsters. I need demons. I need dragons. I need trolls. I want this to be a monster. And sci-fi, it's never really done it. It doesn't do it for me the same way that fantasy does. I'm firmly Lord of the Rings over Star Wars. What a statement. But this is where I'm taking my stand. I like it to be fantasy. So that's my question is, what is your perfect game?
You know, I don't have I would probably, despite the amount of 40k I play, I would probably lean towards historic stuff more than
historic.
And I don't play as much. And I know we play just a Song of Ice and Fire quite a lot, and it's a lot of 40k, and it's sci-fi.
It's like weird fantasy. Yeah. It's pretty close.
Yeah. But I kind of prefer historic stuff because I'm a history. I like history, so it just sort of like, if I had a preference and somebody said, "Hey, you want to play Flames of War?" If I could get somebody who wants to play, no, fucking. Or this the epic stuff I've got, or I would probably lean towards that because that's what I grew up on.
And is this more, you would lean towards the gun side of it rather than the medieval side of it?
No,
because again, for me, it would definitely be further back. It would be, the all interests me, but I've got a Roman army unbuilt that's just itching to fight.
Yeah, I
would
do classical stuff if I could. My uncle had a classical Roman army and things like that, and I like rank and flank. I like formations and outmaneuvering and stuff like that. The one thing about like fantasy games is, like, obviously you had Fantasy Battle, which was flank.
Yep.
I like that because you can sort of move around units and you can things. Whereas 40k, as much as I play it a lot, it's just literally like 360. You can shoot what you see and stuff like that, and there's no sort of I'm sneaking up around you. I've caught you around the side and stuff, and that's going to affect your modifiers. Whereas the rank and flank games, especially like Song of Ice and Fire, any of the sort of games like the historical ones, you hit them in the flank, there's a negative. If you hit them in the rear, there's a negative. There's negative to morale, there's negative hits and things, and it's just sort of.
I mean, that's sort of taken us on to the next sort of thing. So we've decided that it's dice and historic. Basically, I'm trying to find out if there's a perfect game for you. And do leave in the comments below if you've got a game system, mechanic, or setting that you think Matt would like or I would like.
But see, this is it, because for years I've been thinking about creating my own game, and it's not historic, and it's sci-fi based. And I don't know why, but it's just like I think because historic's already been done, you can't really improve a lot.
Maybe I wasn't clear with my question before. It wasn't just what you like as a setting; it was what you think works best as a setting. I appreciate that they're similar questions, but they're not quite the same.
I think historic is a hard is a hard
thing to get right, or
it's not to get right because it's been done for you've literally like the first war,
yeah,
and stuff like that. I can't remember all, but you've got sort of like around 1900. But historic has been done to the point where there's not a lot you can really do much more than it's already. But
it's hard to innovate something new.
Yeah, there is like new sets of rules and come out where they simplify things. This like version has got like they've simplified certain aspects of it, which certain wargamers don't like because they like complicated rules. Whereas fantasy, because it's fantasy,
you can flex any rules to be anything.
You can
if there's a wishy-washy thing, you can kind of go, it's fantasy. What is it? there's a Simpsons episode where they have Xena, warrior princess, in, and there's a bunch of nerds, and they're like, oh, so in this episode, we believe that you were flying, and how did you achieve this? Magic. But what about this episode? Magic. The answer's always magic.
Yeah, exactly. So it's just like, there's a bit more leeway into it, whereas historic stuff, very much. So for like, I would fully encourage people to try out historic wargaming, because I think it's seen as an old man's game, but it's very enjoyable. There's a lot more tactics to it. It's not as complicated as you might think, but I think for the sake of an ideal game flexibility, you would have to go sci-fi.
So that takes us on to the next point, which was, what do you like? And you've kind of already covered over this. I think we can take a wild guess at what you prefer. But in terms of, I guess modularity is a decent word for it. We've already sort of discussed this. Personally, I like... it's kind of a funny thing, because I was going to say there that I like skirmish games, but it's not because I like skirmish games because they're skirmish. It's the number of activations. I'm not sure how you would describe this, but as you mentioned before, 40k is lots of individual little models acting independently. Mm-hmm. Then you've got rank and flank, like Game of Thrones. You have Kings of War. And I feel like what that sort of inadvertently does is it doesn't reduce the number of activations, but it reduces the number of things you have to worry about, if that makes sense. When you're moving a unit in 40k, do you have to be aware of where every single model in that unit is placed? And that requires a certain level of mental energy. Whereas Legion, you've played Legion, you've definitely got Legion. So in Legion, you have, Star Wars Legion that is, sorry. You have a unit commander for each unit. And the sort of the guys that go with it are kind of more wound markers. Yeah, some of them have special weapons, but they're kind of more... The most important thing is that guy. You do your line of sight, you do your movement, you pick them up, you place them down, and then you put the guys around it. So what then is what would you describe that as? Granularity, modularity? What would you describe it as when you have individual people or units, or, I mean, because I know you like it, and we're going to be discussing it later. Matt has a very exciting purchase, because, again, poor impulse control. But if we ignore that for the moment, you've also got things like... your fantasy, you've got things like your Warhammer Warcast. No, what was it called? Warcry, and then you've got Man of War. No, sorry, not Warcry. You had your Man of War. You had your Epic. Was it called Epic?
Oh, Warmaster.
Warmaster, that's it. So, what is your ideal scale? Do you think?
If 40k brought back Epic, because they're doing Titanicus and stuff like that, I would potentially sell all of my.
No.
The only reason I play it is because I play.
Yeah.
I like some of the models. If they're good for painting. The game's good, but for me, growing up, going 40k, growing up, reading the lore and being shown sort of pictures and things like that, it was always grand, big titans, loads of guys and stuff. And then when you played the game, there was 5 guys. And I think wasn't it scaled guys were, and and now it can't scale to the size it wants to. So they've brought in knights, and it's just like, oh yeah, but so I've brought in knights. It's like, so I can't. So I've got lots of guys, and I can't use them all in a game because I'm not going to have the table size for it. And even if I could sort of like put tables together, not other people are going to do that. Whereas my sort of issue with games like that is scale. I like the idea of being able to. You can have in a smaller scale game, like a 15mm game, or even 6mm games, like Epic or Master, or anything. There's a Facebook where they Horus Heresy stuff. Obviously, not official, but it's beautiful, absolutely beautiful.
I've never seen that. Do you know what it's called?
I can't remember, but it's mini Apocalypse or something like that, or it's basically 6mm Apocalypse.
If you work from Games Workshop, he didn't say that. He said some other name.
Yeah. Well, basically, they should do, and I know they've said it's like they've got Titanicus and they've got Aeronautica, and they just need to bring infantry and stuff back. It's just for that you can, in theory, play a skirmish game with that many units because people do it. There's Pocket 40k, which is basically they use 6mm guys.
Yeah.
But they do it using millimeters or centimeters for the thing, and they do it on small tables. So they've got these small guys. They can still play the game.
Yeah.
But they can scale up.
Yeah.
Whereas 40k is now got to the point where you can't go any further without going into Apocalypse games, and nobody has that table size stuff. So it's like, for me, my big bugbear with wargaming in general is scale. And
okay, so I feel like this is slightly different, and maybe there are two aspects to this, and you've brought up an aspect that I didn't necessarily think of. So the way I was thinking about it was more in terms of activations. I enjoy skirmish games because you only have to keep control of 5, 6, maybe 8 people if you're playing quite a big warband. In a rank and flank game, it's actually the same number of activations. I'm needing to keep track of the same number of models. But that's not really what you're talking about, is it? You want to change the scale so you get more activations. Or do you want them to still act, what is it they say in Gladiator? As one!
No, it's literally to give you or playability a different depending on your situation. And this is one thing when I was the way I sort of envisage it, you start off with smaller scale stuff, even if it's like hard, like over one size squad, it's a single guy. You have a thing where me and you could play a quick game of something with minimal amount of guys on a coffee table in a pub somewhere, or we could play this full 16 and have loads of guys. We could do from the smallest scale to the largest scale with the same rule set and the same sort of miniatures and things like that, and you could scale up. Whereas a lot of games, they go for the pretty models and not for the game, and therefore, so as much as Games Workshop have some amazing looking models, they're beautiful, they don't scale. And you're literally getting to the point where you're like, well, I've got these knights, and I've got all these tanks, and I've got all these flyers, and I want to use them all because I've bought them, but I can't.
I'm surprised you've never bought a 3D printer for that reason, with all of the...
Well, a couple of my mates have got 3D printers now, and they are sort of banging on about it. So I'm sort of teetering towards it and stuff, but it's just like, for me, activations isn't an issue for me. It's like 40k, you will forget, but that's how it works. And
so if you had 5 units, you would want them to act as 5 separate distinct things rather than having 5 units just for the sake of having 5 units and they actually act as one.
Oh no, I'm not talking about sort of like it's about sort of kind of rule development as well.
Yeah.
You could have a squad of 5 guys who can actually act individually. If you wanted to just play a game with 5 guys,
Yep.
they could act individually as 5 guys, or you could use them.
Because Apocalypse, to a certain extent, I mean, that, what you're describing, and he is a Custodes player. You are a Custodes player, aren't you? Because Custodes have got Release the Lines as a strat, don't they? Where the unit becomes all individual models.
Yeah, so you can sort of...
But you're not quite meaning it like that, are you?
No, I'm just talking about having a scale where you can play with minimal models,
Yeah.
but you can play epic big games if you want them without needing...
So would you, as that scales, want it to become more compact? Would you want the 1 people to become 1 unit so that it was less activations?
Yeah. So you would have...
Okay.
So instead of having... So what you would do is your small scale would be based on individual guys.
Yeah.
Because it would be effectively a game. As soon as you start scaling up,
yeah,
you either flip the card over, so it's that one guy that was on card is now a unit of 5,
yeah,
or a unit of 10, or you know those square bases you get for it. You've got square bases rep. They turn into bigger units that maybe units or a brigade or a battalion and stuff like that. It's like, talk about later. You can have them as battalions, regiments. You can have them as...
So the number of activations in the game wouldn't necessarily change.
No, I don't think it would. Like, it would in a way, in that there would be more. You could technically get more activations in. So
because I wasn't sure if the reason you were wanting to scale it was to change how the mechanics work. If it's an individual person, you can spin around in the spot. In 40k, you don't really have flanks. Tanks, have they brought it back or not?
No,
I can't remember if they add it in and then
they used to have
remove it.
facings and tanks and
they've got
flyers and stuff, but they don't have that.
Okay.
Which, it's complexity which they took out to sort of make it simpler, but I think they're adding lots of complexity into it anyway. And
I think it was the right move, because it feels like the wrong mechanic in a game. In that game,
I miss templates.
They're individuals. Yeah, but they cause so many arguments.
I
and,
think you get arguments in 40k for everything. I don't think it's gonna. The only argument with templates that I always sort of annoyed me is, like, if your guys are in a building and you had a blast template and you were all like, how do you measure that person because they're up against a wall, and it was hard to sort of thing, and then you were like, well, maybe if I do this, and that was sort of would get slightly more complicated, but it was a case of you had to sort of hold it against the building and go, right, okay, well, we're over that and stuff.
So let's move away from the sort of the scale sort of idea of it, and instead let's talk about measuring then, whether it's measuring with a measuring stick or whether it's measuring with templates. Where do you fall on that? For me personally, I much prefer it. Maybe because I'm a sort of a teacher's pet. I'm the kind of person that, if the speed limit's at 50, I'm going at 50. That is it. So for me, I love games that have, for example, Dead Zone, Dust, cubes. There's no arguing. You're in the cube or you're not in the cube. Unless you put your model halfway between it, in which case I'm breaking your model.
Well, there's lots of...
I don't like measuring tapes. Yeah, I could go so far as to say that's my least favorite mechanic of any mechanic.
Yeah, I can see, because measuring tapes is very much, there is very much a difference between being an engagement, not being engagement within like half an inch and stuff like that. So there's, if you slightly nudge it, it makes a difference.
I mean, the bases on Game of Thrones, they're slanted. So then you're like, oh, well, does it go from my slant to your slant? And it makes such a big difference between charges.
I can kind of understand that. And you've got games like Company of Heroes. It's based on hexes, and you've got cubes for movement. So you've got little cubes, and you go right. So you can make 3 activations. You get 9 activations a turn. You can do 3 each, and then somebody else does 3, and then you do 3 and do 3, and you can put those on any person you want, so they move X cube that and you put the cube down to show what hex they're moving into, but it doesn't matter where they are in that hex. It's just that's where they are. They're in that.
It's strange because I can't think of any fantasy games that necessarily do that. I suppose you have and again, is it a board game or not? You have Underworlds. I'm trying to remember what the actual name is. Because I remember Games Workshop being a bit huffy about it because everyone went, "Oh, are you playing Underworlds?" And they're like, "No, it's not called Underworlds. Underworlds is like the subheadings."
Or Shadowspire.
Shadowspire, that's it.
Shadowspire.
Or was that the? Because I can see up there you've got Night Vault and Shadowspire up there. Like, what is the actual game called?
Warhammer Underworlds.
Underworlds. There we go. So that's what it's called. But can anyone be blamed for thinking that's called Night Vault? If you think that's the name of your game, put the name of the game in big font. Don't put the name of the game in tiny font and then get mad when people are like, "Oh, are you playing Shadowspire?" It's not Shadowspire. Yeah, movement. So where do you follow movement then? Like, would you prefer
I'm
measuring
agnostic.
tapes?
I'm agnostic to be honest.
Do you find that though that in terms of your previous response when you care about scale, I feel like would it be harder to do scale with hexes? I don't think it would.
No, because you can have the old school war games were all hex.
You would need to adjust the size of the hexes though, wouldn't you?
You could, yeah, you would have old school war games, based and quite big.
Oh, what was that game? There was one. It was out about the same time as The Shadow of the Horned Rat, which if you've not played it, it's a great game. It was called. So you had Eldar, and they had like Space Marines, and it was hex based. And this was a computer game. I'm sure it had fire in its name, Flames of War or Fire of War. Ringing a bell?
I know they had a lot of. They played. There was hex based Epic.
Yeah, it was something
and you could sort of it was like the old.
Put in the comments below what the name of that game is. I'm sure some of you will have played it. So, what do you think then? You don't care. You've got no answer. I'm putting a gun to your head. You can't see, viewers, but I've taken out a finger gun. So, what are you choosing? We're making the perfect game here. Well, you're making a rubbish game. I'm making the perfect game, but you're making some. Oh, have we agreed on a single point? I don't think we have yet.
I would say for simplicity, that maybe hex or squares is sort of good because you can literally go, I'm in that square.
Yeah.
There's no sort of, that's it. I'm moving squares. It also means I can move X amount of squares. I can move X amount of squares.
Yeah.
So that basis, because Dust Tactics did it, a lot of other games do it. I think it makes it simple. It's not as easy if you want to make with a table and stuff like that. You'd have to have boards. You'd have to have customizable boards for it to work. But I would, for simplicity, I would do that. But I'm quite agnostic. I don't.
Yeah. Because in Dead Zone, you could use Dead Zone terrain in 40k pretty easily. It's nice square cube. Yeah. But then as soon as you want to try and do it the other way around, you're kind of doomed on that.
Yeah.
It would be, you would need to put the building down, but then somehow be able to work it out, and then you get the same issue, don't you?
Yeah.
You know? I guess you would have to make, as long as your buildings were no more than 4 cubes large, you could probably get away with it, because you could sort of see with the edges where the 4 cubes were.
Yeah.
So you're giving in on that one. You're letting go of the measuring tapes.
Well, again, I grew up on hex games, so it doesn't. I don't, and Company Hero hex based and it's cubes and stuff. So measuring tapes is something I'll use, but it's not a deal.
Yeah, So next one is then line of sight. Notice I'm hitting all the major marks of things that cause controversies because I want to get these nailed out. How would you resolve them? So line of sight one. Have you had issues in games?
Yeah, of course I have. The one thing that frustrates me a lot is sort of like, oh, I can just see your base. That's the one thing, especially in 40k, is very much a case of. This is why I think hexes and squares are a lot better for line of sight because it's literally. You don't measure to the model. You measure to the base. Are they in that square? Is there cover in that square? Is there not? So it's like in Company Heroes.
I love how you keep referencing board games for your mechanics.
I know, but it's the same. It's
Are we going to come out with the perfect tabletop game? It's a board game.
Because it's not. It's still technically a tabletop game because we're talking. We said there was different sort of things. We were saying.
And this one's customizable.
That's customizable. There's different board types and things you can get. different scenery that you put down on
Yeah.
things. So you've got like lines that go if you're in that square, and it's the same with like dust tactics. So dust tactics, those squares down there. Yeah, those like things, ones that I was using for my.
You'll see his crime in the next section.
um, they, you can place terrain in those squares or in that hex, or you can have ones which have like this is a red line, you can't see through that. So if you measure from the center of your square and any of it touches that, you can't see. It doesn't matter if you can see a model or not. If it's going through that red line, that's it. Whereas when you're in 40k and things like that, it's like, yeah, what I can see the tip of his spear.
So what would you do then? Like, so in Dead Zone, yes, they have the cube-based system, but they do the true line of sight system. So if you could see any part of the model, you could shoot at it. But if you're going through like cover, then they get cover modifiers.
Yeah, I understand that, but it's more the fact that it's like.
So would you prefer like just this cube is soft cover? If you're in it, soft cover applies.
Yeah. I think you get things where it's like, well, you're slightly out. I know, I understand. And in 40k, if you're touching a base, if you're infantry, you're in cover. That's it. You get cover. But I can see you. It's more line of sight. Cover mechanics and line of sight is completely different. It's like, I can't see you. I can't shoot at you. You're in cover. I can shoot at you, but you're getting a cover mechanic. Whereas, like,
so what do you do? Because most games actually sort of tread the line between the two. I actually quite like the idea of you're either in the cover or you're not in the cover. So if you're in soft cover, I can see and shoot you. Even if my physical model drawing line of sight, I can't actually see you. I would say, well, you can see anyone in that wood. Behind the wood, you can't see them. In the wood, you can't see them. In a building, behind a wall, you can't see them.
Yeah, I think
you think it's worth doing, or do you think
it's like
is...
Song of Ice and Fire? They really simplify it and stuff, like where there's some really crazy things where you're like, trees don't stop arrows and things like that and stuff. But like they've really simplified it in that if you're behind the woods, you can't see.
Yeah. Unless you're stupid Stark Bowman, especially if you've got Cragaman. Leave in the comments below if you've got an opinion on line of sight and what you would prefer. But
I think
So would you go for true line of sight or not?
If I'm going for squares, no. I go for you measure from the center of the square.
Yep.
And if you can see from the center of the square, an edge of a board that doesn't, edge of the board isn't got a full line of sight blocking piece of terrain, then you see it, and it's sort of that way. Because especially with games like 40k and stuff, the models are all sort of kind of heroically posed, and you've got like an elbow that's out here and things like this, and
then you've got straight off the bat, you've got customization. The Riptide model, I'll put a picture up here, but basically it's a gigantic robot, and the official Games Workshop website has the model kneeling down.
Really? I don't know.
Yeah, because you can make the kit as standing up or kneeling down.
Yeah, so
what the heck does that do to like?
You've got things for modeling for advantage. Now the thing is, it works one way, as in you can't have this huge base and have a guy up here so you can get line of sight. But conversely, when I was running Custodes, they all had their spears out like that, so it didn't matter if I was behind a building, his spear was always getting seen.
But then you've got the rule of you can only see it if you see the base, but then what do? Do you like draw a cylinder up? It's so difficult.
What I would do is you draw a line of sight from your base to their base, and if it goes over terrain, then if it goes over line of sight blocking terrain, then it's blocked line of sight.
How much terrain in 40k is actually line of sight blocking?
No,
you assign
anything
the keywords,
on the ground, anything on the ground floors, line of sight blocking. So it doesn't matter if there's windows in it. If you're on the ground floor, you can.
One of the funniest sort of mechanics in terms of that is Lord of the Rings, actually, the miniatures game, which I still want to play. It has the mechanic of you can shoot. If you can see the model, you can shoot, but you do a test for every intervening thing. So if it's soft cover, then you miss the soft cover on a 1 to a 4. If it's heavy cover, it's like 50-50. If it's combat, it's like 50-50. And so your arrow, you could do like 6 tests until you bullseye the guy right in the back of the head.
Stuff like that.
Hilarious.
I think if you could make it quite complex and quite convoluted, as long as you're sort of kind of, and quite realistic, it's just down to simplicity.
So I think what I would do, I think you've actually somehow managed to talk me round on this. I don't even know if that was what you're trying to do. I would like to do the Lord of the Rings method, but instead of doing a test for each, because that would take forever, I would do a modifier for each. So if you're shooting through, it doesn't matter whether you're losing line of sight or not. If the model is here and the model is here and you measure through things, each of those makes it harder to hit until eventually it becomes possible. So if you shoot through two things that are heavy cover, it doesn't matter if you can see the whole model. If they're standing behind it, you're a negative, and so you can't hit them.
It used to be like that in 40k.
Did
It used to be, because it used to be, if you shoot through a building, it's a -1. You shoot through another building, it's another -1, and it used to stack. Now you can't do that anymore. You can only have a maximum of -1 +1 to hit.
Yeah.
And the
so you can shout. So with my Tau, I can still 72 inches across the entire diagonal of the board and just -1.
As long as you know, if you're shooting, basically, it's if you're doing it, you can't do it through ground. That's why they've done the thing where it's blocking off ground floor. So ground floor is line of sight blocking. You cannot see through it because there was too much sort of alpha striking where people were just like Tau especially were obliterating full armies, guard as well, obliterating people from turn 1. So they've made it you cannot see through ground floor. But if you had like a knight, you could see from one edge of the board to the other through a building.
Yeah.
Most you could get is a -1.
Wow.
Even if you went through 3 buildings, but you could say, like, I can see through these I can see through the second floor and all these 3 buildings. The worst you would get.
Wow. I think I would want a different system to that. So I'm going to move on to what I think is the last mechanic. Do let me know if you think of a different mechanic. The last mechanic for me is customization. So where do you fall on customization? So certain games, for example, I'm looking at Blood Bowl here, even though we decided that wasn't included, but I'm going to choose a game. It doesn't really matter which game. Some games allow you to modify the characters, so their stats. Some games let you modify the characters from their equipment. Some games only allow you to do that when you're doing campaigns. What do you think is sort of the ideal? I think for me personally, I prefer it when it's on the campaign side. I like the game to be simple and then expandable.
Yeah, like they've got the Crusades and 40k where you can actually do a bit more customizing.
Love to
guys and things like that. I like the fact that I can customize units and stuff like that. But historic war games, I'm happy for a unit just to be a bog standard. This unit's a good unit. This unit's a bad unit. This unit's in between, and not have any paying for things modifying and stuff like that. I do like that Trench Club, which is World War One. But it sort of like your units get better as they kill things, so they get experience. So I like the idea of when you're within the game, guys get better when they sort of shoot things and they hit and stuff, so they get experience.
So they like level up while
you're playing.
In fact, I've played games like that. Games like Smite, I think, is quite a famous one, and then you've got other ones like what's it called? There's a big one by Blizzard, Heroes of the Storm. Have you played any of those kind of games?
No, I don't think so.
So those games, literally, as you fight and achieve objectives, your character, the video game character, is literally leveling up, and you're getting new abilities.
Also, it's like an RPG sort of thing.
Yeah,
it's sort of I kind of like that. So
I mean, you love Age of Empires, so it's quite heavily uses that mechanic.
Yeah. So you're not leveling up. They don't have experience. They have sort of you level guys up and you long. But like old Command and Conquer games that you guys would get better.
Yeah.
Sort of get advanced. So miniatures wise, buying upgrades. I like the fact that there's slight imbalance in a way, because there's imbalance in war and stuff. So if you're all got the same amount of, then it's very much down to math and who's meta.
I'm still saying there should be different factions. There absolutely should be different factions, but and again, this comes down to the fact that I'm not good at it. I'm not good at list building. I've never, any game I've been good at. I'm good at when everything hits the table and everything's going wrong. That's the best time at. So I guess I'm wanting to bias it towards myself. But do you think games are better when you can customize the actual models? Because obviously you can customize your army. You can choose whether you want to buy all attack bikes or all people with laser guns.
I like customization. I like the option of it, but it,
Would you do customization in game like that if you could play a game? Because I don't know if I've ever played that again. Put down below if you know a game like that. I don't know a game that you, as you actually play the battle right then and there, you level up. I love that idea.
Yeah, it's a good. It's the first time I've played it where your guys level up based on what they kill. So you basically get a point of experience for doing damage.
Yep.
And you get a point of experience for killing.
How hard is the admin for that?
It's not, because they've got these little sort of like they cut each unit, and there's not a lot of units within.
Yeah.
Unit has this little kind of flagpole beside it, and you put a little circular bead on it.
Yeah.
And the white ones are for your first set of experience, then you get yellow. And what happens is, if you're in the white experience, you get additional dice to your attacks. If you get the yellow, you get 2 additional. Red, you get 3 additional dice, and so it's just literally you get more dice. Say you're more efficient because you are better at shooting things, basically.
Actually, now I think about it, I've actually thought of 2 games: Descent, 3 games: Massive Darkness and Zombicide. They're all board games, but the characters level up, like you said, like an RPG.
Yeah.
I can't think of any tabletop games. I'm guessing it's because of the admin associated with it. I would love to play that. If you know of one, please do let us know.
Yeah, so I think
one.
admin-wise, it would literally just have to have a side it.
I would choose that over customizing your guys before the battle.
Yeah, I could buy. I think you would buy a certain amount of units, so good units, bad units. Maybe you'd have specific units, and then they can get better as they go along. So a shit unit could actually become better if it's sort of,
Do you know what I've just described? I've just described Greyjoys for Game of Thrones.
Yes.
I've literally just described Greyjoys.
Yeah.
I don't think we fully described Game of Thrones though. Were there any other mechanics or anything? Yeah, that was the danger of last time. But can you think of any other mechanics, or if you guys can think of any, put them down below. Any other mechanics that you think are important in a game? So far, mine is a non-dice, so deterministic system that involves very few activations, whether units or individuals. I don't really mind. It has true line of sight, but with variable cover, and my characters level up as we play. If anyone can tell me what game I've just described, it's close to Game of Thrones, but not quite, because Game of Thrones doesn't have the predetermined sort of positions. Whereas you went with dice.
Obviously squares or hexes.
Yep.
Line of sight's based on what hex or square you're on.
Yep.
Center to center, basically.
And did you want them to level up or not?
Yeah, level them up.
Sorry. Did you want to customize them? I think that was the question.
No, you would
customization
buy
was during
certain
the game.
units at the start, and then they get better as they go.
Oh wow! So you would choose that mechanic as well?
Yeah, they would get
Hey,
better.
cool. We don't disagree on everything. We agreed on. It's pretty much 50-50. That's pretty cool.
That what I've described is pretty much dust tactics.
Ha!
But it's.
So we both basically described board games.
Yeah.
Oh my god, we're frauds.
Yeah.
But this is not called the Tabletop Miniatures podcast. This is called the Hobby Hoarders podcast. Yeah. We are addicted to everything. Fantastic. Well, I think on that note, I think it's time to have a look at the next topic, which is news. So the news in the hobby. So
there's lots of facts and for 40k. So Eldar have got some new shenanigans. They've got these new dice rolls. Basically roll a dice each battle round. From what I understand, you roll the dice depending on the size of battle it is. You roll 6 dice. That's right. So you roll 6 dice. Doesn't matter what battle size it is.
Yep.
And then you can take one of those dice, depending on how many battle size it is. So 2,000k, 1,004. You can choose 4 of those dice, and then there's a table, and that affects those types of like shooting, rerolls and things like that. You get those dice, and it's like it's their battle focus, so they can basically spend those as tokens to get better dice rolls.
Okay.
Which is interesting.
Because the Space Marine one is you just sort of get it, like you
get
got Assault Doctrine, and
you've got 3 things for like each faction.
Yeah.
Space Marines basically you start off in your Devastator Doctrine with all heavy weapons are -1 penetration.
Yep.
For AP. Second one is your tactical one, so that's basically all your bolt rifles, double pistol, anything that's mid range
Yep.
gets a -1 to the AP. An assault is basically any weapons that are hand to hand, close combat, and that just first turn is that, second turn.
So it's just Eldar getting the equivalent of that.
No, that they'll have something similar. That their new dice thing is they've
Right.
got sort of, it's adds on to that as well. So they'll have different craft worlds which will have different rules. This is just an additional thing of on top of it. So it's
Yeah.
basically what happens
Is it Codex Creep or is it balancing? Because it's not a new
it's not
codex,
balancing.
is it?
It unbalances.
Oh, is it too good?
things. No, it's what happens is Games Workshop, they come out with a new edition.
Yep.
This is and it's not balanced because what they'll do is they'll bring out an edition and then they'll bring out like a swathe of sort of upgrades for everyone. Say, right, well, this ties in with the new edition.
Yep.
But then they can go, but this is a good, as time goes on, so each codex has a new idea, so they have these new things. So what happens is the ones that were first get left behind. So it's like
what would you rather? Because, for example, if Guild Ball had done that same process, Guild Ball may still be here. So what would you rather? Would you rather do it? Because, I mean, it comes back to, and this is a conversation for another day about should board game, tabletop games, whatever, should they ever die? Do they ever draw their time? Them doing this keeps 40k alive.
Yeah, I understand evolution, and I love the fact that they've got this meta watch where they basically try and nerf things like Drukhari, Dark Eldar, just got nerfed. Talos are now not core anymore.
Yeah,
and
they
stuff.
chopped a lot of core. It was a big list.
So it's like they've literally, they've done stuff because they know that people spam in that unit, and it was proven out. So I like that. What sort of is frustrating is, and they do it because they're a company, they want to make money. I understand that, but it's like got new ideas, and it's an evolution of things. The thing is, because these codex and sort of 2 or 3 months, ones at the start are left behind, and don't get these new rules, and instead of updating them when they've come up with a new mechanic and these new rules, they sort of, now granted, now and again they sort of bring out like the chapter of update points and that, but they don't really get to the crux of the issues within certain things.
Can you blame them though? Like, how much would it cost them to have dedicated
I
players?
Understand. I understand it. They're a business, and they want people to buy things. And
I mean, the game itself as a whole, it's not just one, but the whole game is becoming more deadly because more and more it creeped towards a thing of where there was suddenly invulnerable saves and feel no pains everywhere, and now they've introduced a mechanic of removing those.
It's like
it's like full circle, isn't it?
Mortal wounds. Things, but the thing is, you get now units which put out so many more wounds that you're just like, oh, I'm dead. Grey Knights are one of the things, so it's just like so many mortal wounds.
Really, you're gonna say that Grey Knights are overpowered? Burgets.
Yeah, well, just there's lots. It's I understand why games do it. I try not to be. It's annoying because there's like it's units I've did like my wolf and no apparent reason. They were good, but they weren't super competitive. It wasn't like they were winning tournaments with Wolfen and stuff. Just they were powerful units.
What did you think about the Tau only getting one hero new model? What did you think about that? That surprised me that there was just one model with a new release. That's unusual at best.
Yeah, well, they generally don't bring out lots. Like Space Marines sell
people
more.
Do you not feel though that people whinge about Games Workshop not bringing out new factions or doing that? They just bring out more Space Marines. Don't at me. But the Tau are the newest still, are they? Was there a newer faction?
Tau is the faction. Yeah, it was obviously Space Marines. Or
because there's been subdivisions, there's been extra orcs.
Squats, obviously Squats were there as well. So the original ones from like Rogue Trader You had.
But do you think the reason they haven't brought out more is because it's easier for them to balance, or do you think the reaction to Tau was so disappointing? Because Tau was, if you don't know about them, they're somewhat sort of Gundam. They were to bring in the sort of the more Eastern
Mecha.
audience. Exactly. They're Ikekaiju and all that jazz. But the reaction was so negative. But was the reaction negative because they were overpowered at the time? Is the overreaction because people don't like the models? They think they're too weedy?
I think a lot of people like.
Or do you think it's the lore? Because I'm fine with the lore.
No, I don't think. I think
the implication that they were goodies. Was that the reason they were hated?
Not really goodies. They're sort of.
Well, they're not.
They're goodies compared to everybody else.
Exactly.
They're compared to, they're a bit more sort of like they're not. They're very much,
The implication that the Space Marines might not be the good guys, I think, is what maybe offended people.
Yeah, they're not.
Tell me if I'm wrong.
They're space fascists.
Yeah.
But
the greater good.
Them bringing up, I think
it's single
just,
model.
It's more to do with producing things. More rules. It means more time. It's a business thing. For them to.
But it's weird that they didn't, because normally they phase out some models and then bring in new models.
Well, they've done that a lot. They do that. So there's a lot of models that I used. I used to have bike unit and stuff, which I really like using. They don't use them anymore. Lots of guys on bikes with thumb shields.
They don't have bikers at all anymore.
I can't have bikers, but I can't have librarians on bikes unless you can have a Primaris.
Well, I mean that's one
Chaplain.
of the biggest questions: is how they're going to face out the original
the
Space
first
Marines.
They will eventually.
Yeah.
As much as they say they're not going to, they will eventually. Might not be 10th edition, but it definitely be. And people were moaning because Space Marines were not the size of what Space Marines. Space Marines were the same size as Imperial Guardsmen in the game.
Now they're great.
And now they're like bigger.
Like even I do not do Space Marines at all, but those models, and especially the one. Have you ever seen the one from Forge World, the Minotaur leader?
Yeah.
Oh, he's got a massive crest.
Yeah, they look really good, but it's just sort of like I think it's just down to, like, I'd love them to bring squats back as much as they kind of. We're never going to bring back. It's like they kind of technically have. They're in sort of Necromunda.
There's some in Forge World.
Yeah, so you can. So like, and there is rumors that they will bring back squats. And I think
Black Fortress was one in Black Fortress.
Yeah.
Well? There was a Zote in Black Fortress.
So they bring back some of the old school stuff. They brought back the old school dealer cults and stuff like So there's a lot of stuff they can bring back, and I think they could do squat justice. They could change them if they want to. I know there's the whole they were killed by the Hive Fleet.
Yeah. But all they have to do is say, "Oh, there was a couple of worlds that were missed. Job done."
Yeah, exactly. So or they were on a different planet or whatever. And you could do it easily. And my mate would just buy all the squats. I think I'd be tempted because I always quite thought they were quite cool.
I mean, if you wanted to play squats, all you would need to do, and this is sacrosanct, I know, but you would just go and get the Overlords from AOS, the metal dwarvy dudes, and then just say they're Space Marines, and then boom, you've got your squats.
Well, the people do it as Imperial Guard. People use squats as Imperial Guard and stuff like that. So it's still doable, but they could have their own rules. I think that would be quite cool. There was ideas of a new sort of kind of an idea of a new Xenos race and stuff like that. It's just sales. People buy space. Why would they?
Yeah.
Pick kids when you grow up. Space Marines are the thing you see and you go,
yeah,
and that's what sells.
My news is not necessarily directly to do with the Too Hot Hobby. It's because of a job listing by the Ministry of Defence in the UK.
My mate's got that job.
No way.
Yep.
What, like recently? Or?
He applied for it and he's got it.
Wow. Okay, so there was a job being advertised, which may or may not be now gone, that was for designing war games. Not necessarily the war games we think of, but more like strategic planning. So it could be you might have to design a hostage situation. It could be a card game. It's to get the trainees thinking about how they would behave in those scenarios. So, there's not going to be orcs and ogres, but there will be, oh my god, there was a bomb under there. What do you do? That kind of thing. And so they got it. It's incredible. Are they ex-military or anything like that?
No. He was computers and things like that, and he just went, I want it. And he's a massive war. He won.
Oh, that's incredible. There may still be some listings on the site as well. I'm just really excited for that news as well. But that's an even better twist. That's incredible. And there you go. That just proves that a lot of people were put off from applying because they thought, oh, well, you've got to have a military background. But if your friend didn't have a military background, there you go. There's hope for us. But do be aware that it's not that kind of game. You know, you're not going to be playing a Song of Ice and Fire.
It's just like, right, this guy with the AK-47, I needed to roll modifiers because...
Did he have any experience in creating games before?
He's got his own gaming club and stuff and things. So, but yeah, unless I've got complete stick, but wrong end of the stick. But I'm pretty sure he started a new job. He has to do down south to kind of do.
He's down in Portsmouth.
Yeah, and he's sort of like he has to move, and I'm pretty. I'm 99% sure it's that job.
That is so cool. Wow. Marvelous. Okay, so the next section, this is the exciting section, the section we have been waiting for. This is the what have we done in the hobby since the last episode, which is normally about 2 weeks. We do these. We try and record them every week, but seeing behind the curtain. But you know, we put them out every 2 weeks. So hello tomorrow. It's going to be a long editing session. Would you like to go first or second?
I'll go second.
Okay, so I'm going to go first. So everyone has been talking about the speed paints. Speed paints are not out yet at the time of recording. They come out, I believe, halfway through next week. just try to stick my model in there, show off, get a little bit more glory. But Matt, I was making a video for them because I was lucky enough to, due to a shipping error, get mine too early, which is great because now I can compete with the big boys. But I decided to try and paint them, and my plan was to paint 10 miniatures and see how they compare to contrast and see how they compare to my airbrush, because I love airbrushing. Then Matt messaged me and said, hey, do you want to play 40k? And when did you message me? Was it last night or the night before? I feel like it was last night. Okay, so it was last night. So I'd already spent 2 hours on the first set of miniatures. Then I spent a while faffing around, didn't really paint any miniatures. I was trying to get the purple right. If there's any, I really like the speed paints. I'll put that up front for you asking any questions, apart from the purple. The purple in both this range and contrast can kiss my ass. But it turns out it might not be the purple. Did you know that purple and violet are different colours? And I don't mean they're different hues. Obviously, I know that, thanks. But I mean they're different colours. Like, when you mix red and blue together, you get purple, don't you?
Yeah.
You never get violet. I say never. Someone down below.
The perception of what your brain
exactly.
perceives.
Yeah, because it's like, if you didn't know this is incredibly cool. But screens are made up of just 3 colors: red, green, and blue. Yeah. And so this was something I didn't know, that purple and violet are different colors. And so I was trying to get this color. For our audio-only listeners, I'm pulling out a giant tray with about 50 to 60 models on it.
Models he's done in a day. It's me to shame.
Just
my guys are not.
Yeah. So the models that are on screen at the moment, these are the ones that I did with contrast paints and some inks through an airbrush. Yeah. Wow, speed paint. That Bellicor model with speed paint is amazing. Or were you genuinely saying that you like?
Oh no, I know. I like these. The wings are really.
Tiny, yeah. That was contrast paints actually, for an air gun. So these ones are the spade paint ones, and I was really happy with the colors. They do what they say on the tin. They come off your brush like you have properly diluted your paint, which is something I really struggle with, trying to get the correct dilution. But unlike contrast, if you've ever used contrast, you'll have experienced how it pulls at the bottom of the model. Yeah. If you put too much on, it just literally runs off the model. These stick. Where I put it, it stays. So the reason there's so much variety in colour is because I was trying to get to this violet colour on my models. And basically I tried loads of different ways. I tried adding inks. I tried putting in solid. I think one of them is really dark. Not that one. Maybe it is that one. That one. There's one of them that's really dark. One of these big ones. Here, have these ones over. I think it's one of these. Oh no, it's that one. So this is it on neat. Yeah, this one here is it on neat. And it's just so dark. Like, that purple to me is nigh on unusable. How many times have you ever needed a purple that dark?
Well, I
Yeah.
think it would be the case if you were building up, you would start with. Uh,
No, because speed paint, the whole point of them is one coat. So I want my colors to be based on one coat, and I would rather a mid-tone because then, as you said, I can wash it to get it darker or highlight to get it lighter. So these ones, the one in your left hand there is me watering it down.
yeah.
These were the very last ones to do. These guys, I'm using them as.
Asteroid.
I'm going to use them as Death Shroud.
They are Blight Lord.
They are, yeah. But I'm going to Lord of Virulence or Corruption, one of them. I'm an expert 40k player. So yeah, I really, really like them. So would you be happy? Yeah. Would you be happy with that level of model? And we know that you're a perfectionist.
I'm really weird about painting models. As much as I don't paint very much, I'm sort of like I spend too much.
So you might say no, and I perfectly respect that. It's not insulting to say that. You know if you're not a fan.
No, I think if for a tournament, right? So this tournament's coming up, and I've done it myself where I've speed painted and I've used them to get 3 colors on.
Yep.
Perfectly. You know, for it looks good and
it looks good enough. So you'd want it at higher quality, but you're agreeing they're good enough.
Yep.
What I would then ask you is, if I told you that all of these models, barring Bellicor, were done in just 4 hours, would that change your answer to saying whether or not speed paint is worth it?
My problem with speed painting is this, or what I would do is I would probably go for stuff like that. So like it looks good.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely fine.
Yeah,
but
it works.
4
hours.
For 4 hours.
4 hours is amazing. Like, you know, and you know, like I said, I jokingly said to you, you know, you're gonna and he went, okay, and then you literally did it in a day, and that's sort of like, well, in 4 hours.
The difference is I would love to have done a wash on these guys. Obviously, I just didn't straight have time for our game today, but I would have loved to have done a wash on these walkers to dull down the colours, and then a dry brush of something. It was literally just the grey contrast paint over Zenithal. It's not done. I'm not happy with the base. It's one of those models that I love the model so much that I'm scared to paint it. So it gets a tiny bit of it in each month.
All the time.
Oh,
it's like I've got so many things up here. Like that guy there.
He's gorgeous.
The guy here, which I'm sure Sam will put up on the screen, edits and stuff. But he is not finished, and it's because I'm freaking out that
you did too good of a job too quickly, didn't you?
Yeah,
because it looks amazing.
I'm freaking out because I need to do a bit more on the skin. I want to do some sort of kind of veins and
That's
things
funny
like
because
that.
the skin already looks amazing. It's funny you felt like that, because did you not feel like that painting your Cthulhu? Because your Cthulhu blows my mind. It's so good.
Again, he's not finished. He's just like, so he's not finished. So they're all. I never finish a model because I'm always like, get to that point. What I do is I get to a point.
But surely getting to this point is better. To at least have them all with 3 colours on it, and then you can go back and do that.
Yeah, I would agree.
I'm going to tell you a lie right now that I'm going to finish these, but that's not going to happen.
Yeah, well, I think it's
done for the video.
I think if you want to sort of have something that you can pick out, loads of guys I've used on tournaments and things.
Yeah.
But I do get to a point where I panic because I'm like, if I put a bit of blue on here, I'm going to have to do whole thing again, and like that skin tone is layered over so many things. I was like, I don't know if I can remember the proportions I've done because a lot of it's wet blending and stuff like that. And then it's like, and like, you know, the I need to do more on the spines and things. And
so would you not use speed paint's contrast to get to this level and then build up on it? Do you prefer to start from completely scratch?
My problem
because for me, like I probably won't go further than these. I could, but like I said, I'll probably do a wash to darken all the colours down, and then just a dry brush all over. Sadly, I don't have pale sand. Sorry, Dana Howell.
This is speed paint. This is speed paint, right? So this is using contrasts. Okay.
You know, it's hilarious because I look at that model and I go, "That's done. That looks amazing." Like, why would you need to go any further? And I appreciate if you want to go further, but are you saying that because you use speed paints in the beginning, it's now stopping you from going further with that model?
No, it's just that
really all speed paints. That's great.
So it's just
anyone that thinks that speed paints can't achieve good jobs, you're wrong.
So it's like, I think, let's see if I put anything Yeah, no, that literally is just the gold obviously isn't, so I've added the gold on, so the gold isn't speaking, but everything else is. Um, and for me, it looks slightly patchy. That annoys me, and I
Yeah.
like sort of um.
Is there not, I thought there was a motion at the moment of F smoothness. I'm sure that's trending on. I'm always behind with my references, so it might have already happened.
I like especially in my cloaks and things like that. I like them to be blended to darker, lighter, and much as that is, it technically, I suppose you could make that, you could blend that in a bit more. But
Yeah.
for me, it feels like it's on.
Yeah.
And it's good for a game.
Yeah, but you could do your highlight over the top. Or are you saying
Yeah.
you wouldn't even like doing the highlight over the
Well,
top because the
it's
other
like
bits would
it's
be
like
patchy?
this looks slightly patchy. That
Yeah, but
sort of,
that's what real color looks like. If I look at your black T-shirt, it's not one solid color, is
I
it?
understand that. It's just the theme. It's for me. I've grown up with certain ways things are painted, and it's just like I'm just like that's how things. And my
Yeah.
OCD in it, it's just like that needs to look like that. Otherwise, I'm happy.
I mean, for me, I've definitely got. I've got a video that I'm writing at the moment, which is 5 things that hold you back in the hobby, and that level of control is absolutely one of them.
Yeah, big
If
time.
you're painting on tiger stripes, if you paint them uniform, it will look terrible. I mean, it won't look terrible if someone like Sergio Calvori does it, because it'll look amazing. But you know what I mean? Like, tigers don't have uniform stripes.
Yeah, I understand. Oh no, again, it is just like I am just really weird. Like Sam's perpetually asking me to paint my guys, and it's not because I don't trust him. It's just because I don't have any control over it. And it's like it's not. I'm not saying he's a bad painter. It's just that they're my models, and I feel like I want to paint them and stuff. And it's like as much as I probably will never get round to painting half stuff that I've got, even 3/4 of the stuff I've got.
It's better than grey plastic. Anything is better
I know,
than grey
but
plastic.
it's just I don't know what it is. It's just it's just a part of me. It's just like I can't do it. It's something I can't seem to get past. It's very much a case of if I do that. So if I gave them to you and you come over and you do a great job like you've done there, you bring them back, my mind would automatically go, "That's a good job. I don't want to finish off." Then am I offending him because
No.
I'm taking that? But then it's then the part of me is like I'm focusing on something I don't want to focus on. I want to focus on something else, and then
I mean, I painted a whole army for my friend Jim. The fact that he's now immediately turned them around and selling them, I'm watching you, Jim. But, you know, for him, it was starting to weigh on his mental health, you know, because armies do, but he just couldn't bring himself to do it. So I quickly painted them up, and I said, look, if they're not to your standard, just paint over the top of them. And he's never got around to it because he's like, man, they're not now.
if I had loads of money,
you would pay someone else to do it.
no. If I turned around to you, I'm going, you know what, Sam, I got a fucking. I want you to guys.
Yep.
All of these guys to the best of your skill and stuff. I might do that because it's finished.
Yeah.
It's like it's done. But if it's just like, you know, I'm going to put paints on so it looks all right on the tabletop, I can't pass that. I have sort of.
Yeah, but you can finish it. That's the beautiful thing about these. Nobody says I need to stop painting those.
I know that. I'm not saying you can't. I just can't get past.
And no opponent ever, let me know if I'm wrong in the comments below, but will ever say to you that you've got a shit paint job. If someone says to you you've got a shit paint job,
I know
slap
that.
them in the face.
I know that, and the thing is, like, the thing is, I do apologize for my painting whenever I play games and stuff. You know, I get some good sort of plays, and I'm happy with, but then it's like the rest of them.
So you're in like this horrible catch-22 of you don't want to paint because you won't paint them good enough, but you hate the fact that they're unpainted and it's all weighing on your mind.
Exactly. It's exactly.
I am looking forward to the mental health episode because my goodness, you are a contradiction, aren't you?
I did my own head in. It's really bad.
Wow.
That's really bad. I do my head in big time.
Fantastic.
But it's weird because when it comes to board games, I have zero. I don't mind them being sort of. Do you know what? I would sooner things be plastic, a different color plastic. And talk about this, a different color plastic that I can differentiate because in my mind, I can differentiate between one side and the other, and I have no feeling that I need to paint these guys and stuff because I can play the game and I can differentiate between things and stuff like that. If it's all just grey plastic, then yeah, it's maybe a bit things. Board games and stuff generally come with one faction's red, faction's blue, another one's yellow, and I don't have any issues with them not being painted.
I'll be honest with you, that is something that I regret. Like for my Zenithal video where I did the 1,812 21 models, I spray painted Rising Sun, which is bright, and Ankh and Blood Rage, which were bright, nice colours.
Yeah.
I do want to paint the models at some point. I regret spray painting them now because they have little rings that go on the bases, so I can still differentiate, but I shouldn't have sprayed them all until I was ready. But it was good for the video, you know.
Yeah.
If I'd excluded all of my board games, my actual backlog probably would have only been about 800 models.
I don't even want
Okay, we have talked about mine for quite a bit. Let's see. You've been itching to pull it out, big boy.
So, I recently, again, I haven't bought anything historical, but the lid. So it's basically called Black Powder Epic Battles. So they've got American Civil War version of this, but this is the 15mm, 15mm historical. Now I have historical 15mm, and I can show you.
Absolutely gorgeous. It's 4 of your British. Did you paint that?
No,
it's got like a hand-done Union Jack.
No, this was the first ever historical model my father bought me, and
he bought it painted, or
he bought it painted.
Wow.
I remember it came in a inkjet. You know, back in the day when you could refill your sort of things, and you got this little syringe
needle
and stuff. I remember it very vividly. It was an inkjet box. I opened it up and went, "Why do I want the refill for?" I was quite young. And he went, "No, open it up." And these guys were in there.
How many of them do you have?
So I've got some cuirassiers up there. I've got a squad of Peninsular War, 12 Peninsular War British troops, and they're beautiful. Absolutely, I love them. Like
how someone painted that. Varnish.
Yeah. So, but they're hand painted. They're absolutely so well done. And I've got loads of stuff in a box upstairs. Loads of 15mm Napoleonics like that. So detail's quite good. But they're all individual.
Yeah.
That need to be painted, stuck down onto a base, and the bases are all sort of like you don't get bases with them. You make bases. And
so you can choose if you want 4 or 8.
So you sort of, depending on the model, not the model type, you and as a kid, I didn't understand it fully, so I've got and they're all individuals, and it got to the point where it was stressing me out so much that I wasn't able to make get these. I didn't want just and you couldn't differentiate between French, British, Russians, and
because they were literally the same model, or
no, not the same model. They all had different.
Glance?
There was a lot of variety, which was good. You had guys who were charging the bayonets, or you had guys who had them up. You know, so you could have a squad. You know, you could make square formations, so they had guys who were standing up, and you had guys who were kneeling down, and you know, your skirmishers, positions, and but it was just, there was just so fiddly. 15mm guys painting as much as you can paint them fast. Just lots of them, and they're just seemed like a lot more hard. Then I got this, right, and I saw it, and I went, this. I looked at it, I went, oh. I was just like, that's going to take me ages to base. Put together.
You know how many miniatures are in just that one box? The Waterloo campaign by Black Powder.
There's
a
lot.
I mean, he showed me one expansion pack, and that one expansion pack alone, if you were to count them as individual miniatures.
So you're not, and I'm not, so basically, this is effectively not even the full box. I've got cavalry stuff. But you've got...
he's just lifted up a clear box that is just like 2 layers of these small miniatures.
And this literally took me night. I just cut them out of the sprue, because they're done in sections of 10 guys. You don't even need to glue down onto the base.
So there's what, 20 on your base?
There's 20 on the base.
And they sort of clip in, which is
clip in. Yeah, so you cut them off sprue left and right, stick them on the base. They're literally a 10 guys, and they're red and French are blue.
And does that make them that they're no longer on your sort of your conscience?
Yeah, in my mind, it's just like I can take these out of the box, and you can see a video on them. It's like I can take them out of the box. I can differentiate between French, which British. I can sort of set them up in formations. So there's the flag bearer, so that I can have like line formation.
And how does the game mechanics work? Have you not read that?
So you can have you can have them in, depending on what size of battles you're doing. So you can have them in 4, 5, 3. So that's a assault column. That's a movement column. You can squares and stuff like that. Depends. Sides. So you've got different.
So just with those 3 bases, there are 20 men apiece.
Yeah.
There's 60 men. So in that box you're holding there, is there 1,000 miniatures? So how many in total do you think you bought?
I am aiming at this moment in time to have a legitimate representation of the Battle of Waterloo.
Was there not like 80,000 men?
Like 75,000 British and about 80,000 French. But I'm not doing it man for man.
Okay.
So
I mean, why even bother if you're not going to do it man?
I'm doing it. I'm cutting it by 4. So dividing it by 4. So there's going to be.
That still means you'd have 20,000. Or do you mean on both sides?
Yeah. Sort of. I'm basically aiming to have each regiment in there. Each regiment that was in there.
Yeah.
A cavalry and infantry, and obviously howitzer and 9-pounder.
That's insane.
So I'm obviously it'll be based on a regiment. So there was a certain amount of battalions. So it's a case of, do I do a line of guys of 4 bases as a regiment or as a battalion? So it's down. If I do battalions, I'm going to need a lot more.
Yep.
If I do them as a regiment, then I can do brigades. So each regiment of 4. So your average.
I think you could still play with 10,000 miniatures on the table and still be up in the top 1,000 biggest games of all time.
Yeah, well, it's like you have like they did a game I saw online. The 2 guys from Miniature War.
Miniature Wargaming, they're the guys that do 40k, are they not?
The magazine, what's it?
Wargaming magazine.
I can't remember.
Wargamers magazine.
Basically, they did a one where they played everything out of the starter box.
Yep.
For the 2 starter boxes, French and British.
Yep.
And they said they struggled to get it all onto a 6 by 4.
Yeah.
And it looked amazing. Like the pictures are
Were they
absolutely
painted
amazing.
or were they unpainted?
No, they just had them red and blue, and they just said like they had them.
This game.
This game there. And it just like they had, the thing is, they said they had terrain and stuff, so you get terrain with it, so you get MDF buildings and things like that and stuff.
Yeah.
You get Le Haissant and you get Hougoumont and you get the Belle Alliance and stuff like that. So for all you history people, buildings that were around.
And have you bought those, or are you
yeah,
going to use
you got them. You get them with the set. You got them with the set and stuff. So I got La Belle Alliance and stuff like that, and the other one you get sort of, and then there's Place Noire and stuff. There's lots of things. I bought some 50mm trees. I've got some hills turning up at some point.
And where are you going to stream that when you do it?
Me and you are going to play that at some point, Sam.
Nice.
And we're going to sort of we'll
put a link in here. So subscribe if you don't want to miss a link to that.
Rules wise, there's a lot to it, but it's not super complicated because they've dumbed it down slightly. But so good. I'm so excited about it. And I'm just
this has to be, apart from, old school Space Marine / Epic and War Master, I can't think of another game the official game that's done this sort of scale.
No, and it's just sort of like, this is classical war gaming, and it's just like, I grew up and like you see, like, and you'll not be able to see these pictures of this.
And with the dust. And,
yeah,
that's clearly cotton wool, but it still looks amazing.
But even stuff like that, and it just, and it's just like, I'm just looking forward to that. And it's just like, from the games I've seen, generally the American Civil longer, it's literally your guys don't sort of, they have amounts of stamina, but they don't lose guys. They just run away and stuff like that. And so it's about pushing them back, and then will they run away and things like that. So there's not lots of sort of markers and stuff. There is like a dice beside.
That was something we missed off actually. Activation.
Yeah. So, but yeah, so I'm because I'm not panic. It's something I'd sit there and watch the TV, clip them out, stick them on, done. And when I've got both sets done, I'm not going to be, because I saw a video of them playing with them just red versus blue, and it looks like you're playing like a computer game or something like that.
Yeah.
Because it's red, blue, or if you're in one of those maps where you're seeing this, the thin red line against this the. So it doesnn't bother me, and so them being.
Will you base them?
I will. At some point in time, I'm going to paint some of them because I just see the pictures in the.
And with them that small, would you trust me to paint some of them? Nope, that's a no. Okay, fine.
It's not about trusting someone. It's not trust. I trust you implicitly. I just have this OCD sort of thing.
You have so many of them.
I know.
Rinse them with my airbrush.
Yeah, but yeah, this just looks.
Well, thank you for watching this section of the video. This is the patron exclusive. You, yes, you are the best people in the universe. Are you a patron? What are you doing here? You can't be here if you're not a patron.
I buy all the microphones and things like that. I spend my money.
So in this section, we tend to talk about something we're looking forward to, which may or may not have been that. Might need to cut that and move that into this section. We're also going to be talking about what we are working on, and then if we've had a gaming idea we want to discuss or a favorite thing / memory. So the first thing would be something that we're looking forward to. I have a Kickstarter arriving. One of my favorite things about Kickstarters is at times in my life, especially now with the baby arriving, I have a lot less expendable income. And that's when Kickstarter is just amazing. Because a Kickstarter you paid for a year ago, 2 years ago. I mean, these ones are all, it feels like it might even be 3 years ago. Finally, you get that notification that it's on its way.
You're like, to your future self.
It is. Self-love, people. Make sure you practice self-love. So this is one of those games, and I think most people can associate with this is, I mean, have your partners ever played these kind of games with you?
Nope.
And if you thought there was a slim chance there was a game you could get that they might play, would you buy that game immediately?
Yeah, if I could get, because I tend to not date nerdy girls for some reason. I tend to go for girls who don't like this sort of thing, and so they just generally have no interest in it. But if I could get a game that I thought girlfriend would play, then yeah.
So I bought my wife's favorite Disney / favorite sort of fantasy stories, Alice in Wonderland. She loves Alice in Wonderland. I have played various games, and I've bought a lot of games over the years for us to play. Some of them are really good. Alice, the Mad Hatter Came to Tea is a really good 2-player game. It's really fun. You just have cards, you flip them over, and basically one of you wins. It's like rock, paper, scissors. You both flip them over at the same time, and then if you win, then you do something to the deck. So there's some strategy in it. I win it too many times though. It's just don't play it anymore. But because of that, I bought this game. It's called Alice War in Wonderland.
Wow, okay.
So you collate an army and then like fight in it. So there are some miniatures as like an expansion, which I of course immediately bought, but you don't need any miniatures to play it. So that's the thing I'm most looking forward to. I'm hoping it'll be close enough for her to play. The other one I was eyeing up was Lord of the Rings, the miniatures game, because I was like, would she play that or not? So if anyone can think of a good, simple sort of tabletop war game, because then I would enjoy it and she would enjoy it, let me know. But yeah, getting that ping, getting that notification that it's on its way is a good feeling.
Yeah, well, after our last podcast, 0, talking about the Rome Total War one, which I thought hadn't come out yet, and you quickly told me it had, I backed the shit out of that. So I've been getting updates for that. So that's the one thing I'm doing. I just hope they do it justice. because it's quite a complex game.
I don't see how. Like, I watched the videos, and I don't know. To quickly clarify, Shogun I played the donkeys out of. I played so much Shogun and Shogun 2.
If you look
Didn't
down,
really play Master
down
of
if
War.
you look down there, a game called Shogun,
Yes.
and it's based on, that's where they got the Total War.
Really?
Yeah, so
Is it
that's
good?
so basically in that one, it's you've got a map and you've got it's like a risk type thing, Japan, and you castles and guys and stuff like that. But you also have this little board and you ninjas.
And we haven't played this game.
I
Why?
used to play it loads when I was a kid and stuff, but yeah, it's an old game called Shogun, and I think that's where the Total War games sort of kind of stemmed from because that was like, well before.
Which one came out first, Shogun or Rome?
Shogun was the first one.
Shogun was the very
Shogun
first
Total
one.
War was the first.
Ah, wow, nice.
I remember playing it when 2000, I think.
And are you back to the absolute hell?
The Rome Total
Yeah.
War. Yeah. Back to all the expansion.
Ah.
So I'm just waiting. Now they say there is no, it's not going to be literally get minutes to play, the tactical game, but there is a tactical battle thing, and I think it might be card based and stuff like that. But as long as they've got something like that where you can sort of like zoom in and sort of do battles and stuff, I'll be happy.
I always hated it when they make the battles compulsory. I absolutely hate that. In the Warhammer fantasy ones, I'd be happy floating along, auto resolving. I don't get it. I don't understand why I can love it in person, but then you put that exact same thing, hate it.
Okay.
I can't do it. It's too fast. That's what it is.
Yeah.
And
I can't think of.
Exactly, and the speed movements of the units, I click that to move there. If I was doing the miniature game, I would slide that, and then I would have to work out what to do these. But I don't know. I like Tabletop Simulator for that reason. But
I Total War games I love. Me and my brother played through Total War, which he got very annoyed about because his computer crashed. We were playing that, and the one thing I like about it is that armies aren't always matched, but you can still win because you're using terrain and you're sort of, like he would use, he was the Spartans and the Romans, and he would sort of just line them up in cover, or not in cover, in a street, and you're not getting a phalanx in the front, so it was very hard, and so I had to sort of adapt, even though I had a bigger army, there was no through that. And I had to adapt my sort of strategy, so I used a lot more slingers and a lot more archers and stuff when I was fighting them because I knew that was the only way I could break through, and then I would use cavalry down and stuff. So I kind of like it because you've got set units that you're sort of moving through the board, and then you've got to use them and stuff. It's not like RTSs like Age of Empires, where you have to keep on pumping out new units and stuff like that. That panics me. I don't like that. I get, I'm not fast. My brain doesn't work fast. If I know what my army is and I know what it does, I'm a bit easier with it and stuff because that sort of like moving that. He's not paying attention there, and
we still need to play Age of Empires actually.
Oh yes. Well,
I would
me and my
love
brother
that.
have been playing quite a lot at the minute. It was bit where he was beating me all the time, and then I've got a bit of a technique now where I'm starting to kind of pull it back. So
good. Well, if you ever want an easy win, let me have a crack at it. I used to be good at it in 2, and I used to play the Lord of the Rings one. Lord of the Rings.
Battle for Middle Earth.
It feels like everything has the word "Battle for Middle Earth."
No, War of the Ring. It was called War of the Ring.
It's called War of the Ring.
It was called War of the Ring.
No, I think you're right.
No,
I think it was, there was 1 and 2, wasn't there?
Yeah, Battles for Middle Earth. That was it. Wasn't it? War of the Ring's the board.
Oh yeah, which I think you've got both editions for.
Yeah, I've got both. Hell in the first.
Oh really? That's an easy find right there. Cool. So the next thing is, what are you working on? You got a particular project that you're working on? I think you've already brushed on it a little bit. You've got next weekend.
Making these guys here, but I've got my army to paint. That is gotta be minimum 2 colors, but I'll aim for 3 colors and everything and stuff. Got one dreadnought I've already I'm using shield and axe dread stuff. So most of them have sort of got a lot of colors on them already because I'd sort of started painting them, so not too. But I've got 3 squads of infantry, which I've converted to look partially wolfen. So I've given them wolf stuff like that. So got a bit of. They're just black. They will probably. I'm going to airbrush them and then.
You ever kick yourself? Because I do the same thing. Like my video last week, for a number of reasons. One, that I was meant to be doing a video on tournaments, and then due to some funny stuff that happened, so at that tournament that I was telling you about that I went to and got first place, it's called Overdrive. You have big giants and you do battles in big arenas. And basically, if you ever played Time Splitters, you know how you had like King of the Hill, Capture the Flag, Pass the Bomb? It's that. You have 3 big giants and you're beating each other. And what happened was I played through my games and I played the guy at the top table, and it was such a close game. Like it was down to the last rolls and it was a draw. Then I played my other 2 games. So I had won by landslides 4 of my games. Landslide means I've scored 8 points. They've scored 0. And then obviously I had a 0 because of that. So I get third. I'm like, oh great, that's fantastic. I'm like on the podium. I'm really pleased to be on the podium. Then the next guy gets called. I'm like, I thought I beat him. I had no losses on mine and maximum points. I'm like, that's weird. And then the first place person goes up, and he's the person I got a draw with. So I go up to the second place person and I go, oh, did you landslide your other games? No, I lost 2-1-3. Okay. Went up to the first place guy and went, did you landslide all your games? No. I won them, but I didn't landslide them. And I'm like, that's weird. So I go up and I say, like, and you always feel like I don't know if you've ever had this, but you always feel like when you question any of the rules, you just feel ungrateful because they've organized the tournament. I'm like, I paid to be in this tournament, like not free. So I go up and I say to him, and they realized that they hadn't added any of my bonus points. I was third with none of my bonus points.
All right. Okay.
So that meant I was first, but it meant that all the photos are already done, all the names and the things are already done, and so they're wrong. So it was a bit annoying because it meant that I couldn't put it on my social media because there wasn't a photo of me getting the first person trophy. I have the first person trophy.
Did they take it off to the guy? Did they go, that's not yours anymore?
Yeah, they literally. But do you know what's funnier? It's the second time on the trot this has happened. The last tournament I went to, an Armada tournament.
Those other guys are going, that asshole.
I know. The last tournament I went to, I was 4th, and I was like, that's weird. Went up and questioned it, and I was first. And I was just like, man, so it's the 3rd time in total it's happened, and 2 times in a row. Literally the last 2
See,
tournaments.
I wouldn't question it, man.
I know. I'm like, look, do you just not want me to come to the tournament? I won't come back if you don't want me.
You're one of those guys. It's like,
I know. This guy's a whacker. Win at all coaster. So you're working on that at the moment. Hopefully we'll have some photos.
yeah, maybe.
Yeah, maybe.
We'll
well, you can at least
I'll send some photographs of the tournament.
at least send photos of what you've already finished.
Yeah.
And at time of editing this, the photos won't probably be invisible, but as he gives me them, I'll add them to the links down below, so you can always download them, both for our audio and visual listeners. What am I working on at the moment? Well, I'm working on the video for the speed paints.
Yep.
And I really enjoyed them. I thought they were great. Do I think they're better than Contrast? People are divided on the pots, funnily enough, but not in the way you might think. The Contrast pots often get this white film at the bottom, and if you don't shake your pot properly, that white stuff, which is part of the magic of Contrast, doesn't get mixed in, and then Contrast doesn't work right. My blue is particularly bad for it, and it comes out as like this thick sludge. So the speed paints have agitators. They have little metal BBs inside them, so they don't really have that problem. They're also in a dropper bottle. Now, this is both a pro and a con. The con is something I wasn't expecting. It's hard to judge how much to take out when you're doing your speed paint. You don't know how much you're going to use because it goes pretty far. And depending on whether you put it in as a thick layer or a thin layer, you might end up with way too much on your palette. Now, if you're using a water palette, due to its properties, it will get oversaturated, and worse, it will soak into your sponge of the water palette. So you don't do that. So instead you put it on a hard surface, because if you put it on something like paper, it will just absorb in. And what I found is, if you do it on a hard surface and you're not painting fast enough, it films over. Have you ever had that in a paint? Yeah, I mean, obviously, when you leave paint like a few days, it goes like sort of rubbery and then finally dries out and goes hard. This gets a film all over it within. Now, admittedly, I was painting for 2 hours solid, but just thought it was strange.
Yeah, that's odd. Yeah.
So what it means is you can't put any you've poured out back in the pot because they're dropper bottles. So it would be almost impossible to put it back in. So it's a criticism that I was not expecting on speed paints. One, it's very hard to specify how much you want out versus a brush. And two, you can't put excess back in the pot.
I would never go from direct. I've never gone pot to.
But speed paint, you're supposed to. Speed paint and contrast paint, you're supposed to do it in one thick coat. That's their idea.
Oh, okay. I don't even use the. I always water it down.
Yeah.
Or I use them more for brushes and stuff like that.
Yeah, which it works absolutely fantastic out of. Both of them are great out of the airbrush. Contrast paints are amazing out of the airbrush. I would say contrast paints were slightly better. They were slightly better through the airbrush. That might have been just my experience. But I tried, and I'll put a picture up and showed you, Matt, the different types of model and how I did them with speed paints. In my desperate attempt to match something that I was never going to achieve because it was done with different paints, I tried it several different ways. So I tried it neat, and would you describe that for the viewers? So I didn't water it. That's the purple unwatered.
It's very dark,
Mm.
quite shiny.
It's almost not opaque, which is strange because that's one of the advantages of speed paint. So then I tried it using just white ink, and you know what? It was a lot better. It was a lot better, but it lost its luster, and because of the white ink, it also sort of lost a bit of its transparency. So it was kind of strange. This one was just fully watered down. And that worked actually pretty well. When it was still wet, I wasn't a massive fan. But now, because Death Guard were originally, they were white armor, weren't they?
Yeah.
So I actually quite liked it, because mine are all purple. So sort of this slightly white, slightly purple, I quite liked. And then these last two were just watered down with a little bit of water. Sorry, not water. They were done by thinning medium. And these ones I can live with. I mean, obviously you're comparing all of these to the original one, which was done with inks through an airbrush. And for the time, you know what? I think the ones that are just watered down with a thinner, they worked.
The first one I don't like.
Yep.
Too dark.
Much from a muchness.
Are pretty. Not identical. There's different. I prefer.
Is that the one just with the water, so much thinner?
Yeah. Looks
painful.
There's more sort of highlights are a bit. But I think.
Yeah. Yeah. So speed paints, apart from the purple, I would absolutely give them thumbs up. I really enjoyed them. That's my favorite one, and obviously it's taste, but that was done with inks through the airbrush. It was blue and then the purple over the top, and that's how I was hoping they would come out in the speed paint. But these, to do 10 infantry, 1 captain, and 2 machines, was 5 hours using the airbrush.
Wow.
These were 4 hours using the speed paint. The speed paint was faster than the airbrush.
Yeah.
That blew my mind. And then the next episode I'm doing is can you paint your army entirely using a rattle can and nothing else?
Oh no!
I know. I mean, Tatter are a great army to do that on, aren't they? And
yeah, well, the thing is, I cans for like terrain and stuff like that. I don't know if I.
So the plan is to zenithal them, do a red over the top, do a light white zenithal over the top, and then do the red over the top to get a gradient in the red to make it sort of mixed. Flip them upside down, put them in like cling film or something, spray upwards towards the base so I can spray paint all of the trousers and stuff black.
Yeah.
Then put the cling film on the bottom half, spray the entire base blue to get, because all of mine are on ice bases. I'll put a picture up. And then I've got like a little, and I tested it out and it remarkably works. Just a bit card with a circle cut on it, the size of the visor.
Oh, okay.
It's got another circle on it, the size of the gun bit that I want to glow. Literally put that with the model and go shh, and like get that. So it's not a little bit of card. It's like bigger than the model, so that there's no overspray.
Oh yeah, okay.
What a waste of paint. But it worked.
Okay.
It created like a glow, like an OSL glow on the model in the eye.
All right, okay. I'll be interested in that.
But yeah, so you may be able to paint your entire army using just that. And if nothing else, you can just use it as a base to start off with. Fantastic. So next bit is if you've had an idea or a favorite thing / memory that you wanted to talk about. The gaming thing I really want to try is and I think a lot of people do this. We spend hundreds of pounds, and it's so painful when you actually think about that. You try not ever to think about how much you spend, but yeah, we spend a lot of money on that, on multiple armies, and there are two aspects of the hobby that we do not spend the money on, even after spending all this money on the models. Can you guess either of the two?
Say that again?
So we would spend hundreds of pounds on miniatures, yeah?
Yeah.
There are two aspects of the hobby that we sorely don't spend the money on. Guess either of the two.
And the money
Don't spend. We should, but we don't spend the money that it
basing
deserves.
materials?
Base materials? Yeah, I mean, a lot of people don't maybe do their bases, but most people do a nice enough base, and even just using
Paintbrushes.
Paintbrushes, again, not quite. I'm thinking more the tabletop hobby.
Shoes.
No.
Hairdressers.
What? Oh.
If anybody's saying there's an advert, and it's just like I can't remember what. Basically, they asked this kid and the guest something. It's like shoes, hairdressers. It's just anyway. Sorry.
If I find the link, I'll put whatever he's talking about.
Shoes, hairdressers.
But two things that you use every single game. Anytime you go somewhere and you play a game, you will use these two things. So going to the tournament, what will you need to do before you get there? No. So you'll need to take your army there.
All right, cases,
storage solutions.
Yeah.
How much have you spent on miniatures, and how much have you spent on storage solutions?
The best storage solutions I've got my Dust Tactics guys. I've got some custom plucked foam cases down there for my Dust Tactics stuff.
Wow.
And they were quite expensive.
Are they painted?
No, just
what? So you spent loads of money on the.
I know, but
you've got these beautiful
do you know
miniatures.
I did it because I was going home to Northern Ireland and I wanted to bring them all back with me, but I was going on the plane or something and
yeah,
have sturdy stuff. Like there's loads of good cases.
Yeah.
The Games Workshop cases are not. They just
even the new ones.
Yeah,
the new ones
they've got this sort of kind of
wiggly
sort of kind of wriggly thing, and it doesn't. The best ones you're going to get is called
Elder.
Yeah, or there's another one. Fuck! It's like an army in the name in it or something. It's not army paint. That's the name of the paints.
It's not the one with the cardboard boxes, blue sponge.
Oh, you can. Those are.
Oh yeah, KR cases. Yeah.
There's multi cases, but there's loads of different ones. I'll bet. I've got a load of games. I don't think. If you don't give a shit about the models you're painting, that you bring in like I do, because most of them aren't painted properly, they just stop a little damage. But if it's like something nice,
yeah. So what's the other thing then? So you've got your models, you've put them in the case, you've got to the table you're going to play on. What is the other thing that most miniature hobbyists, prove me wrong, don't spend the money or the time that they should on? Hint, hint, you're going to be showing some in this section of the video for you, what you're going to discuss about what you've done. Look down to your left. Terrain!
Right, terrain!
People do not spend enough time on their boards. And I can sympathize. It's, it's most of the time it's a storage thing, I think, more than a. But do you not agree? Like, I've spent so much money on miniatures. I only got proper training boards not that long.
Yeah, I've got loads of terrain, So like I've got all the terrain. I've got cardboard terrain. I've got MDF terrain. I've got all kinds of stuff. Resin terrain. And yeah, I think if you put a lot of time and effort, it can change what a game looks like and stuff.
Yeah.
The only reason I've started doing some terrain recently is because my dog chewed up one of my knights. A lot of people, I got like 2,000 likes and blocks and stuff on the 40k. So what I thought.
What about your dog getting chewed?
No, the dog chewing up my knight. So I was sort of filming myself converting it into a scenery piece and stuff.
The knight's that damaged, it's now a scenery
piece. It's completely destroyed.
Oh wow, we need to put a photo up of that.
I've got photographs of it somewhere.
Oh. I think maybe I did see the post then. No, because I thought you were meaning about because what happened when I walked in. There's another chewed knight.
Oh yeah, he's chewed that he goes for my knight. I'll show you. So
big enough to be toys.
Of it.
Wow, that is annihilated. When you said it was damaged, I did not realize you meant that. Like, it is annihilated.
There's no coming back from that.
Check the links to that one. Audio listeners, definitely look at the picture for that.
It's absolutely. And I did a TikTok because my dog's famous. 104.
How many have you got?
Geek Pride's got 500, and my history one's got 5,000. So
history one's so good. Yeah. What's the link to your history one? Do you know?
It's just Matt G, history nerd, I think, or history.
Nice.
Something along that. I haven't done a lot. I mostly do blog because. So I've basically started doing I started doing a video, which I don't do, how to, but because so many people said make terrain out of it, do that, I was like, all right,
you can put it on the basic brush if you like.
So I've done sort of things.
I'll go in then, get them out. Let's have a look. Hey. The reason I was asking about the storage and the terrain, because I'm so good at segueing, I got both your topic and my topic in. Although it would have been smarter if I'd finished my topic before I asked for yours. I wanted better solutions, storage solutions. So what I've done is I've got several metal sheets, and I'm using those metal sheets to magnetize my models on. A lot of companies, when they're doing like their advertisements, like for example Vodafone or other companies, they use big metallic sheets or magnetic sheets. And what you can do is you can cut them down to size. So I'm trying to make a storage solution. So there'll be a video on the basic brush at some point. Subscribe here and subscribe there and subscribe to Geek Pride. Oh, so much homework. So you don't miss any of those videos. Yeah, literally. Okay. So when I walked in, I saw that he had destroyed some beautiful display boards, but you haven't actually. Are you planning on painting over the bottom? All right, because that looks awesome. He's used the Dust Tactics board as the base of it. You could use this in Dead Zone as well because the cube's the same size.
I've kept it, so other than sort of, they're not finished.
They're great.
So like there's the night bits and like I've got a sort of weather things. I'm gonna paint some of this stuff, but like this is airbrushed. Spent ages sort of kind of sticking on some bits boxed.
Yeah, the only thing I would say is, you've done a beautiful job on the inside, and a lot of people just leave them dead. Maybe the outside, maybe get some pipes or something if you've got any pipes, or guitar strings are really good for it.
Whatever I can. Like these ones are
great.
A lot and stuff. I've basically gone through and I've used like that odd stuff.
Yeah.
Which I've put that aside so it gets texture.
Yeah, no, that works really well.
So textures.
They put some windows in.
So, but chewed up bit.
Oh man.
All the chewed up bits that are on there, so I've just got that done. Put over some.
The devastation of Ball.
It's like.
Yeah. Are these going to be in our live stream, do you think?
I don't know if we're going You have to finish at 6 or 4 or something.
We still have time for something. All right. Well, thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed the podcast, do give it a share, give it a like, give it a comment. We really do appreciate it. If you enjoyed listening to us, you could subscribe to our respective channels, and you could also consider supporting us on Patreon. If you join Patreon, not only do you get access to some cool people and chat to us, but you also get the opportunity to watch an extra 30 minutes of bonus features where we talked about what this terrain is, why I have 5 different models that none of them match the same, and what else we talked about. And what we've been spending our money on Kickstarter. Yeah. This has been The Basic Brush. I have been Sam. This has been Matt. Thank you for watching.
Bye.